Before we start this week's episode, a quick note. This show exists because of people like you. If you want to help us keep making episodes like this, you can support The Hidden Third on Patreon at patreon.com/The Hidden Third. There you'll get access to bonus content, lots of behind the scenes, and much, much more. And if you haven't already, please follow or subscribe to the show wherever you're listening or watching, and leave us a rating, a review, comment. It really helps us over here. Thank you so much.
It was like this very dramatic change in my life. Like I just went from more or less sleeping in
The public
bathrooms and staying in my friends' places and trying to find different friends' basements I can sneak into that they'll let me sleep at for the night and got to be out before their parents are up kind of thing, to all of a sudden, I've got more money than I know what to do with.
Jonathan Wall, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know we've been talking for a few months. I'm happy we made it happen. You actually couldn't fly out to LA because you're currently still on parole, right?
Yes. Well, probation.
On probation.
There's no parole in the federal system.
On probation, that's right. So, Jonathan, yours is actually one of the craziest stories I've ever heard in the criminal justice system. In 2019, you found yourself in a federal supermax in Baltimore facing 10 years to life, not for violence, not for hurting anyone, but for moving weed across state lines. The same thing that 45 minutes away from you in Washington, D.C., you could do completely legally. While you sat in a maximum security cage, cannabis corporations were going public on the stock exchange. It's, I think, really crazy government overreach in a way, your story, and which is why I really wanted to have you on the podcast. But before we get to where all the trouble started, tell me a little bit about you. So you're from Baltimore, right?
Yeah, I'm originally from Baltimore.
Right. We were just talking about The Wire, best show ever done, written by David Simon, and it's all about about Baltimore. Yeah. So if people haven't watched it, they should on HBO. But tell me about growing up in Baltimore and then how you got into the weed business.
No worries. So I grew up probably a little bit closer to Baltimore than Philadelphia, kind of right in the middle, an area called Harford County. Yeah. The town I grew up in is called Havre de Grace. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's kind of like your typical suburban, East Coast, all those areas kind of, it's like in between, DC all the way up to New York. They're all kind of more or less the same. Mm-hmm. And I kind of grew up in that era where, I guess it's kind of later on that whole middle class, suburban, especially the East Coast area, got very decimated by opioids. Mm-hmm. Grew up through all that. Had a lot of friends that all got, all died from the proliferation of fentanyl when people thought they were taking prescription pills before people even knew about that. Yeah. I guess it's all later on, that's not how I grew up, but
still happening now, different kind of drugs. Still opiates. I was in Philadelphia and Kensington doing a story about trank dope a couple of years ago as well. So so that whole area has been really badly damaged by the opiate epidemic.
Yeah. And it's it's been ongoing for a long time. There's a reason why The Wire, David Simon wrote The Wire, since you mentioned it, just because that's, that was over 20 years ago, and, not much has really changed.
Yeah. And so you grew up, you had a lot of friends who got addicted to?
Yeah. Later on,
Oxy,
it seemed I was fortunate enough to not have kind of slid past all of that, but I just watched it all kind of happen around me. It was pretty, it was very prevalent. Mm-hmm. But yeah, starting before that, I grew up in, my parents, still together. They're great people. They obviously really wanted the best for me. I have a younger sister, and it's just us four. I think they really, they're regular middle class parents and really worked hard and wanted the best for their kids, but because they wanted to get the best education possible for their kids. I know my parents, they really stretched to try to put my sister and I in this private school. That and my parents never had any nice brand new cars or anything like that. And these kids at the school obviously were very, from another stratum of society. And so I think from an early, maybe when I try to think back on maybe what caused me to break bad, so to speak, it was, I think a lot of it probably goes back to just from kindergarten, first grade. I went to the school where I never really fit in.
Right.
Felt like the Beverly Hillbillies always showing up, and and my dad's driving this 40-year-old early. At the time, not 40, but early 80s, diesel Mercedes pulling up, and all these other kids are getting out of brand new Escalades and brand new cars. And it was just a different class of society. And I always knew and felt like I didn't really fit in there. I started probably, I guess, like dabbling in drugs and
dabbling in
alcohol.
drugs. You mean using or
Just using drugs and alcohol probably around like the end of middle school, early high school, and
so 8th, 9th grade.
yeah, probably 8th, 9th grade. Was getting in some trouble. There was
weed or what drugs are you?
I was like weed, like drinking alcohol, but obviously like I don't know. I kind of like extended other stuff.
Here's a fun thing that happens. When you host a podcast, brands send you things to try. Timeline sent me their supplement MitoPure a few weeks ago. I gave it a shot, and I'll be honest, I actually felt a difference. More energy, better strength. Now I'm kind of hooked. Here's what stood out to me. Once you hit your 30s, you start losing muscle mass every decade. I already work out, I eat a lot of protein, I take the usual supplements, but none of that matters if your cells aren't functioning properly underneath it all. And as we age, the mitochondria, basically the power source inside your cells, start to decline. That impacts strength, recovery, and the overall resilience. Timeline has spent over 15 years and invested more than $50 million studying this. MitoPure is designed to support your body's natural process of clearing out damaged cellular components and renewing them. That's the key difference here. In a clinical trial, participants saw a 12% increase in muscle strength in just 4 months without changing their exercise routine. The way I see it, muscle health isn't just about building more. It's about improving how your body powers what you already have. I'm definitely sticking with it. Timeline's clinically proven MitoPure is now available at a lower price. It starts at $79 when you subscribe at timeline.com/Mariana. That's timeline.com/Mariana. So I've reported extensively on scams and cybercrime, and I hate to say this, but AI has totally changed the game. Scams are smarter, malware is faster, and phishing emails look shockingly real. But the good news is that you don't need to be a tech expert to stay ahead of it. Here are the same steps I follow every day to protect myself online. Use strong, unique passwords. A reused password is really the easiest way for cybercriminals to break in. Enable two-factor authentication whenever possible. It adds a simple but very powerful layer of protection. Be skeptical of anything urgent. AI is great at generating panic-inducing messages. A 10-second pause can prevent a costly mistake. Keep your devices updated. Most attacks target people running old software with easy-to-exploit holes. And the most important, use security that can keep up with AI threats. This is why I trust Webroot Total Protection. Unlike free antivirus tools or older security programs, Webroot is built to counter modern AI-driven attacks. It's fast, lightweight, and designed to spot threats before they ever reach you. It literally doesn't get better than that. Webroot is a cloud-based antivirus engineered to stay out of your way. It takes up 33 times less space than bulky competitors and scans 6 times faster. So instead of waiting around, you're getting instant, powerful protection without the lag. And because the intelligence lives in the cloud, Webroot keeps your computer running light, fast, and smooth, all while defending you in real time against malware, phishing, ransomware, and other threats. Whether you're working, browsing, or streaming, Webroot is the antivirus that works for you, not against you. Make the switch and feel the difference of truly fast, modern antivirus protection. For a limited time, you can save 60% on Webroot when you go to webroot.com/Mariana. That's 60% off today, but only when you go to webroot.com/Mariana.
It's like I'm trying to decide how I should say this on camera. I've been thinking about this a lot. A lot of what led to this was when I went to the school. There was this guy who was like a trustee at the school who was like I guess he had like a PhD in psychology and like donated a bunch of money to the school. And he had and so they kind of gave him like free run of the place. And so like he would kind of like pick these kids there that had I don't know what how he chose which kids he would like kind of take under his wing, but he could take them out of class whenever he wanted to, take them back to his house, take them into like, he had like his own little like kind of office other room and just like hang out with them and get them out of class. And so like as a kid, obviously it's like, cool, I get to go to this guy's house around the corner from the school instead of being in my, like 10 a.m. math class or whatever it is. I get to just leave and skip out and go play Grand Theft Auto or whatever. But, the guy was, he was obviously a pedophile. Right. And so, and so I think that, it wasn't like as bad as like other people have it or what I think is portrayed necessarily, or so I'm not trying to like give that impression, but I think that obviously his kids were really impressionable. And, and I think that's that's where, when I look back on my life and I try to look back at like where I kind of like deviated from like what was expected of me and where my life with the trajectory was supposed to go on. And probably goes back to like around that moment. Yeah. And so
you said he picked some kids, right?
Yeah. There was like other kids. It wasn't
you were one of them.
Yeah, I was one of them.
And he would take you guys back to the house, and what would happen?
Well, I'm not like trying to like, it wasn't like as bad as I'm trying to like, it is like, it probably sounds necessarily. But like he obviously wanted to be around like younger boys, kids, and it wasn't like he necessarily, I don't know what happened with like the other kids. Right. But like, it wasn't necessarily like it ever, I don't think he knew which ones that you could cross the line with and which ones he couldn't.
Did he ever do anything inappropriate with you?
Not necessarily, right? Like, but like very like suggested, like,
was he ever naked in front of you?
No, it wasn't like that. But sorry, I was just trying to like figure out how like to talk about this on camera. I never discussed this, and I didn't really want it out in public record too much. But it's one of those things where it's like anyone who knows about my story, or like when I had like no reason to have ever like gone into like breaking the law and getting in the situation I was in, a lot of it probably like a lot of it like clearly stems back to that. Like I look at like my life, that's like really where things kind of like deviated.
I'm sure that had a big impact on you, of course. Like how could it not?
Yeah, I suppose. It's so I don't know.
So you tell me what you're comfortable telling me.
No worries. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just trying. This has like been on my mind a lot, thinking about like how I come up here, like how do I like share this, because I don't want to like hold back necessarily, and then people like, and then it not be like understood like how I could have ended up like dropping out of high school and living homeless as a teenager, and which obviously led a lot to me doing what I was doing, and ended up being like at the end of the day like really intoxicated by feeling like I had to make so much money before, because I knew that this like window of opportunity with cannabis was only going to last so long before corporations took over. And I think I like justified a lot of it because I knew what it was like to be homeless and not have any money. There was a point in time where I was like sleeping in a public bathroom.
Okay, wait. We'll get there.
No worries. Understood.
But you felt some sort of not being safe around this guy in a sense, or you felt like something was awkward around him.
It was awkward. And like, and it was, he would like say things that were suggestive, and you knew and kind of knew what it was. And as a kid, it's like you almost feel bad because you're like, man, I'm taking advantage of being able to get out of school because this guy has chosen me. But I don't know. I think that it kind of gets in your head a little bit, and I don't know. It just.
And did you tell your parents at the time?
No, I never told them.
Till this day.
Till this day, it's like it's why it's weird to talk about it on camera, like for the world to hear about it. So it's like it's not. Yeah, I never told my parents about it.
Have you told anyone?
I think I told probation, like when I was doing my PSI, because it was one of those things where it's like, all right, they want to know before the judge sentences you, like, why did you break the law? What happened in your life to cause you to end up being here, the other side of the table? And so,
did this guy ever get in trouble for anything?
He's dead. But it was one of those things where it's like, I think that the school should have clearly known. His kids wouldn't talk to him, and it was very
his own kids.
His own kids wouldn't talk to him, right? And that's kind of a bad sign. And then when your grandkids, you can only see them under like very supervised situations, right? Like that's kind of like a key, like that's an indicator,
of course. And this guy, you said he was a big he gave the school a lot of money, and because of it he had a lot of power. A lot of access, for sure. And he was able to come into the school and literally pick the kids he wanted to take back to his house during school hours. And then hang out with the kids and who knows,
more or less. Yeah. And he had like, they gave him like his own little office there. He was, I guess because he had a PhD in psychology and he had some money and he donated money to the school. And because it's a private school, they considered him like I think they called him a trustee. And so because of that, like, he kind of had the lay of the land.
And it was probably under the pretense that he was doing some sort of study with the kids.
It was more like picking out the troubled kids and trying to help them, So he would pick out kids that might not be doing as well in class or had been getting in trouble or been causing kind of, kind of like the more rebellious middle school kid types that aren't really getting with the program. And I guess it was under like the whole pretense of, I have a PhD in psychology. I'm going to help, counsel these kids and help them be better. And I don't know. It's obviously, as over the years have come out since then, we've all seen all these scandals that have broken out, like the Boy Scouts and with the Catholic Church, and it's everyone. I think society at large is pretty aware that pedophiles they try to position themselves in these places of access where they can obviously get around children. And I'm not necessarily saying that the school is at fault. I don't think that they necessarily knew, but I don't think today that would have ever been able to happen. I think that now that there's such a more awareness of that kind of activity, that I don't think today it would have been necessarily as easy for him to have for just like anybody to donate money to a school and have access to kids. I just think that when I look back, obviously like that was probably where it's like a lot of the drug use and a lot of the like not doing well in school and not really having much, I wasn't really doing what was expected of me. My parents they had a pretty high standard. They really made a lot of sacrifices to try and,
I would say it obviously changes your view of the world, right? And it gives you sort of a skewed version of the world.
Oh, for sure. It definitely makes you very cynical at a young age.
Yeah. And also not as trusting of adults and those positions of authority and power as you would be as a 5th and 6th grader,
Yeah.
So this happened to you, and obviously it sort of changed and you know that it had an impact on it. Like it was after that you started.
Yeah, it was definitely after that I started, I almost like forced my parents to like not let me go back to the school anymore. Cause I didn't want to be around the guy. I didn't want to have to say why I didn't want to go back to the school. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I knew I didn't really fit in there. And, I was just different. I don't know. Like I just wasn't really part of that, like private prep school society, those type of kids. And once they had kind of conceded to me trying to go to public school. At that point, I don't know, I just really got into skateboarding, didn't really care about school, smoking weed, drinking alcohol, skipping school, kind of had like a cynical view in the world and didn't really expect to really ever make anything of my life. And so at some point my parents had me pulled out of school and they had me sent to this like what Paris Hilton, like those kind of places they sent like those people to out in Utah.
Behavioral.
I went to a wilderness
camp. Those are tough.
At 15, it was tough. And
I don't know how those things exist. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Was it one of those really brutal ones?
Oh, it was insane. Yeah, I got kidnapped out of my parents' bed in the middle of the night. I probably hadn't been home. I was 15 years old, right? And I hadn't been home for, I probably hadn't been home for like a month. And at some point, like I would just stay at friends' houses or sneak in their house at night, sleep in their basement, do whatever, just to not really go home. And then my parents, it wasn't like they did anything. I obviously feel terrible for what I put them through because they didn't deserve any of that. But I think I was just really ruled by my emotions and just was kind of, being a teenager stuff. Yeah. And anyway,
and so they hire this company. When you say you were kidnapped, I don't think most people even know that this exists in America, but you can basically get your kid into one of these programs. And what they do is they will come to your house in the middle of the night and you'll take your kid. They'll wake him up, grab him and take him into these centers because it's sort of a forced program because you're not an adult yet and you don't get to choose. And your parents decide that you're going to be sent to this place.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
In the majority of cases, I think obviously parents have good intentions and they are trying to do the best they can for their kids. But the reality of many of these programs, I'm not sure if all of them, but at least many of the ones that I've looked into, they're incredibly brutal. They do everything but rehabilitate or work on behavioral. They actually make you, feel really bad about it. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It was, so I'd been kidnapped out of, I call it kidnapped because I don't know what else to call it. These massive,
that's what I call it too.
Like bouncer looking type guys came and grabbed me in the middle of the night out of my room.
You're crying? What are you doing?
My mom was there crying. I didn't know what was going on. I was handcuffed and thrown in the back of a rental car.
You were handcuffed?
Yeah, handcuffed me and threw me in the back of a rental car and took me in handcuffs through BWI airport. Like they had papers that obviously showed they had custody of me. And I think when we got to the airport, they, the whole thing was crazy. So I get flown out. They take me we fly from BWI in Baltimore to Las Vegas.
Just you and the bouncers.
Just me and the bouncers, two of the bouncers, yeah. And they dropped me.
Wait, your mom, sorry, just when you left the house, your mom was crying.
Yeah, my mom was crying. Obviously, like she wasn't happy about having to do this. And I'm sure like it really impacted her.
Yeah. And you're crying, or you are asking, please don't do this, or what are you saying?
I'm not
You're in
saying like
shock.
I'm too tough to have cried, right? But I think that, I don't know, a lot of times like.
Did you realize what was happening?
I realized what was happening by the time we were at the airport. You know, I kind of had an idea. They made it seem like I was going to some kind of like outward bound type camp. You know, I was going to go like whitewater rafting and whatever.
Yeah.
I can't really remember what the guy said, but it was only going to be a couple weeks and I'd be back home. So they fly me out to Vegas. They drop me off with this other guy who drives me all the way out, and the place is called Red Cliff Ascent. And it's like one of the more brutal. Like there's a lot of them in Utah, and I don't blame my parents because
this was in Utah too.
Oh yeah, it's a whole industry.
Utah,
it's a crazy industry,
it is.
and there's got to be some kind of correlation with the fact that the Mormon culture there. You know, like they don't drink caffeine, they don't consume any substances. They at least try to portray, for the most part, like a very pure, livelihood. And so I don't know. I'm sure that it's just interesting that like there's this culture there specifically that is all about fixing kids and getting them off drugs or out of their whatever like behavioral issues they have. And they drove me out there.
And I'm sure there's something to do with how it's some sort of legislation that allows for these places to exist in a way that they wouldn't be allowed in other states. Yeah, I know that in some states in the South as well, these exist. But I know, it's huge there. Yeah. And you arrived and the idea of the program, tell me if this was a wilderness one, so you were camping the whole time. How long were you there for?
I was there probably a little over 100 days, 108, 110 days, which is long. Some kids are out of there in 60 days, but I didn't really get with the program for a while.
So that's 3 months.
A little over 3 months. Yeah, I was there a little over 3 months.
And get with the program is if you behave and do everything they want you
exactly.
to do.
Like they had like phases that you had to work through. And like as you completed each phase, you had to eventually, like I can't remember what it was. It might have been like 8 phases you had to do there. And as you would earn your way through each phase, eventually if you completed the 8th phase, you'd be able to leave. And I think the quickest I'd ever heard of anyone doing it there was maybe like 8 weeks, something like that, at 56 days. But yeah, I was there nearly twice that long.
Wow. And what was the most absurd thing? Give me some examples.
Oh, it was crazy. So we weren't even given backpacks. So you didn't camp the same place every night. We were taken out there, and don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. I mean, looking back on it compared to prison, it's obviously would have preferred that than I haven't been in prison for as long as I was. But they at first they wouldn't even give you a backpack. You would get a tarp, and you'd have to carry all your stuff in there. So it'd be like rice and lentils and various like camping stuff, and you have to put it in a tarp, and you'd roll it up, and you'd have to take like paracord, and they'd teach you a certain way to wrap it up with paracord, and you'd create ribs in the spine, so it'd be like a backpack, and you'd roll up your sleeping mat in it, and your sleeping bag would be inside of it. Then you'd have to take like a seatbelt material and like feed it through and like make your own backpack. And eventually, if you like made it past, I think it might have been like the 5th phase, you could earn a backpack. But yeah, for most of the time, you're hiking about 10 miles a day. I mean, it was dependent on the weather, because I got there in May. Right.
Because it also gets, I've seen some video footage of this stuff, and it's brutal. It also gets super cold. You guys are not, some kids don't even have sweaters. They're not given any proper equipment to be hiking or appropriate clothing for the weather conditions. And we're talking about 15 and 14 and 16-year-old kids. It's insane.
That's insane.
And the whole idea behind it is that, and the food also is not great, right?
But I mean, that's like the least of it,
right? And I think the idea behind it is that if they're going to teach you, they're going to make you a strong man, they're going to beat the
discipline into you,
right? And once you go back home, you'll be a great student, you'll be obedient, you'll do everything your parents will want you to do, because we're gonna beat this scary straight. Yeah, but also take out any sort of individuality that you have, right? If you might not be a great student, but you're really into listen to like hard rock music or whatever it is, and they're just trying to force you into these ideas in their mind of what a kid should be.
For sure. Absolutely. And then there's one huge aspect of it is like they call them educational consultants. And so a lot of times, because my parents were like going to different therapists and psychologists trying to figure out like why I was so defiant. There we are, like a defiant disorder. I think there's some kind of like behavioral defiant disorder thing they call it. They like diagnosed me with. So more or less, I guess, like being a rebel for the sake of it. And I guess when parents are going and dealing with like psychologists that deal with kids specifically, there's obviously this whole industry where these educational consultants have like a pipeline to all these psychologists that are like family psychologists and family counselors. And so there's obviously, I'm sure, some kind of like referral program that goes on to where they're incentivized when kids, and I'm not saying this wasn't called for, right? I mean, I was obviously like in a bad place in my life and I wasn't acting as I was supposed to. I was getting in trouble, wasn't going to school. So it's not like it wasn't called for. And, it took me a long time to necessarily forgive my parents for this because I was a kid and I held on to some resentment for it. But I mean, I absolutely get it now.
Do you think they regret having done it?
I don't know. It's hard to look at it that way, right? Because things happen the way they happen, right? And we have a great relationship today. And
but wait, when you left the camp and you told them everything you had to go through, they still thought it was a good idea to send you there?
I mean, you don't have any communication with them. I
mean, but you left eventually, right?
Well, when I eventually left, but
you hang out with your parents after being there before you went?
Well, I graduated, the program after being there like 100 something days, and the educational consultants had convinced my parents, well, look, he's made a lot of change, but the change isn't going to stick unless you send him to this other place, because it's a whole racket, it's all about money. The bottom line, and they're all getting some sort of like referral commission for getting kids into these extremely expensive programs. Fortunately, my mom, she worked for the government, so she was able to use, I guess, some of the health insurance that I'd had covered
to pay
a lot
for
of
this.
It. Yeah.
So where did they send you after that then?
So I stayed in Utah. I went to what was called like a residential treatment center for juveniles in like just north of Salt Lake City. And I mean, it wasn't like a prison. It was like a nice house and a big house, a bunch of kids. But I mean, man, there was a lot of really, really messed up kids in there. And
right, you're not even being sent to these places because you had a drug addiction, or it was because you were defiant. Because you were
defiant, but there was the drug addiction. There was like definitely substance use, right? Like, I mean, I was smoking weed and I was drinking alcohol. I wasn't really doing anything harder than that. But,
but like so many kids, I mean, these are normal behaviors that I think most 15 and 16-year-olds out there being defiant to their parents is very common. I mean, not every kid, but a lot of kids out there are defiant towards their parents, and then experimenting and starting to smoke weed and alcohol at that age is also not crazy.
I hear you. I definitely hear you. But at the same time, I just think that if I hadn't been sent to this place, I don't know. I mean, I could have easily, when I look at kind of like what I mentioned earlier, like growing up in that area and seeing so many friends that have died from opiate abuse or people I just grew up with, I don't know, dozens of kids, right?
Wait, so there is a part of you that thinks that actually it was good for you that you didn't?
In a way, like, I mean, I think it was a terrible experience, and it was, and I think I have qualms with the way the whole thing functions and operates, but like that kind of arrested development aspect of it did pull me out of potentially a trajectory that, I still ended up in prison and international fugitive and all this stuff. So it's not like,
not sure actually. I forgot to mention the international fugitive part of it all. Yeah,
so it's not like no worries. It's not like I ended up like, in this like ideal, just paragon member of society, but I think things could have been a lot worse. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you went to the other place, the residential therapy place, and
like then 18 months.
18 months. Okay.
Yeah, I remember one of the things that really, this is what I held on to for a long time afterwards, and a lot of why I had so much resentment of my parents when I came home. Because when I came home, this was kind of what led to me kind of being homeless as a teenager, and like almost in like a worse position than I was before I left. But fortunately, it was relatively temporary. But I remember they used to have these things. They would call them family days, and so everybody's family would all come out, and they would like do these like big group therapy sessions with like everyone's family there. And I didn't know that my mom had been diagnosed with breast cancer. Oof. Yeah, and I remember they had my mom tell me she had cancer in front of all these people and their parents. Yeah, that was rough. And so like rather than something should be like a really private,
of course,
you know what I mean? And so anyway, I kind of, that was rough. And so eventually I get out of there. Right. And so when I come home, it's, it didn't last long, the honeymoon era of being home. And so I made it through my junior year of high school, did all right. And I think grades weren't the best, right? But I like made it through, went to school every day. It wasn't like an issue. But my senior year, I just kind of lost it, and just parents and I weren't really getting along. I'd really held on to a lot of resentment to them for this whole experience, for having put me through that, which, you know, they were totally justified in doing it. And it wasn't like it was their fault. You know, like there's a lot of naivete that like families go through, and parents that just want the best for their kids when they end up, like, it's not like they want to have to send their kids to these places. Right. And, but like, you know, when you're a 17-year-old kid, you don't get that. You don't have that like awareness. And so anyway, I remember I left the school that I was at junior year, and I started my senior year at the local public high school. And at that point, it was just so easy to skip school. And my parents are kind of giving up at this point, and because they tried everything they could. And so I just stopped going to school. And for a while I was living, you know, homeless, like staying at friends' houses. And at some point it got to where I was sleeping in this like public bathroom in my town. I mean, it was new, it was concrete, but it was like a room, right? And it was down the street from a friend of mine's house.
Did you leave your parents' house, or they kicked you out?
I kind of left.
Mix of the two?
It was a mix of the two. It wasn't like you can't be here, but it was like if you continue like doing this behavior and not going to school and failing drug tests, you know, you can't stay here.
And at this point, it was still weed that you were usually
so mostly weed. You know, so mostly weed and drinking alcohol. I think there was like a little period like during this time coming up, like after I left my parents, that you know, maybe like some cocaine use, but it wasn't like, you know, I'm a kid that can't find a place to live. It's not like I can afford it, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I had a friend that lived around it was a crazy situation. The guy was one of my co-defendants, and we'd known each other since we were like 5-6 years old, grew up playing, you know, just soccer and lacrosse, like for the, you know, like the local recreational teams. And at any rate, his dad had been on the run for a cocaine case for years, like, you know, and wasn't in touch with the family. And no one knew where he was, but his mom, she had to take care of the whole family, you know, and she had to support the family working she worked at a restaurant, was like a bar manager. She didn't get home till late. And so I would go hang out at his house all day. And cause he lived down the street from this like public, you know, restroom kind of that was attached to this like little promenade, because the town I grew up in is like right on the water. It's like real beautiful. It's right where the Susquehanna River meets the Chesapeake Bay. And so there's this little like wooden promenade that people go to that kind of like walks around like right there on the water. And anyway, they built this new bathroom. I can't believe I'm even talking about this, but they built this new bathroom that was like, it was like new construction, you know, I don't know, it's like a concrete building and concrete floor. And every now and again, you know, I would just make sure when I was at Chris's house that I would, I'd leave and grab some blankets and pillows and go down to there.
And why were you sleeping at your friend's house?
Well, I was there so much.
You didn't want to be like a burden.
I mean, eventually I moved in, right? Eventually she let me move in after like so many.
The mother.
Yeah, the mother, after so many times her coming home early. And it's like, what am I doing here at 11:30 at night? And eventually she let me move in.
Because she didn't even know that you were sleeping in the public bathroom next door.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
then when she found out, she said you could.
Yeah.
And you would so you bring a blanket and a pillow and you'd sleep there.
Yeah. And then,
and were there ever people that would come in and see you there sleeping?
No, because it was, I mean, no one's there in the middle of the night. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I would be there. And like camped out living there, you know. It was really just like if I couldn't find anywhere else to sleep, that was.
What were you thinking at this point? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I was just thinking really hopeless. Like, I just didn't. It wasn't like hopeless. Like thinking that you know I'm not gonna go anywhere with my life. It's just, I don't know. I think when you're in that kind of situation, you're that young, it's hard to really have any forward thinking. Like I'm not thinking.
Yeah, your brain isn't fully developed.
Yeah,
either.
Exactly. You know what I mean?
You're thinking also, shit, life sucks.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how am I going to like deal with tomorrow? Like, what am I going to be doing? What am I going to do to make sure that I can eat tomorrow? To make sure that I can, you know, I have a place to sleep. Where am I going to go? Can I stay at a friend's place tomorrow? Can I stay in like, you know, this friend's car or whatever, right? And so I don't know. At that point in time, I wasn't thinking about the future all that much, you know.
And so was it soon after this that you started?
Well, this is kind of what led to
getting in the business.
Yeah. So I never really sold weed in high school in that area since I got back, because it's like all my friends sold weed. You know, what am I going to do? Am I going to buy weed from my friends and sell it at an upcharge and then sell it back to them? That's not going to work. And so fortunately, like one of the good things I did when my friend's mom let me move in is I immediately went and got my GED. which was
That's great.
just great to have, right? At least like now somehow I've been on this terrible path and I've made all these bad decisions, but now I have my high school diploma before I would have normally had it.
Yeah.
And so at least it's out of the way.
Yeah.
And I think that I received something in the mail that I got like in the 99th percentile in the GED, and they like invited me to like some kind of like national awards banquet to receive my diploma.
Oh, wow.
And because I guess like the people who score the highest on the GED, and a lot of the people that take the GED are like actually really smart kids that are trying to pipeline, like go on a faster pipeline into whatever,
so
like
it's not high school.
Whatever they're doing.
It's not high school dropouts usually.
Well, at least those people, right? And I guess somehow, I don't remember the test being very hard. And apparently I scored so high, and they invited me. And I didn't go because I was like, what is this, dinner for schmucks? So,
oh my God.
Around that time, I went to a friend's birthday party, and I met this guy who was like a huge weed supplier. This guy out of Philadelphia. And all of a sudden I now realized that, all right, all my friends are buying quarter pounds and half pounds. Well, no, they're buying them far down the line. They're high school kids. Okay. And now, this is a guy who's bringing hundreds of pounds at a time from California to Philadelphia. And so I immediately just struck up I don't know what led us talking to one another, but when we forged a connection at this birthday party, and the next thing I knew, I realized I can take, if all my friends are buying quarter pounds for $1,200, and I can go get a pound of weed for $3,800 from this guy, all I got to do is get him to drive me up there. And, I've made $1,200. That's $1,000. I've just made and I've never seen $1,000 before my life at that point. And, I barely have any, my friends are paying for me to eat at this point right now. And so, that was where kind of like the switch happened immediately, that I realized like, oh, wow, there's something here. And before I knew it, I saved up $10,000 while I'm still living at my friend's mom's house. And, but it wasn't like I looked at it like this would be a long time thing. And so I went, and there's a place in Maryland called Ocean City. A lot of people go to, like college kids, and they like work a restaurant job or a bar job for the summer. And I went there and I worked for, the summer, just like a busboy. And, but like during that time, I'm selling weed in Ocean City to like all these college kids while I'm going to work. And I'm making so much more money doing that I don't know. It didn't really take long for me to realize that, like there was something here, and this is probably 2013, 2012. So legalization is just starting. Colorado, Washington, D.C. They'd already legalized in some form or fashion. Everybody knew that California and Oregon was where everybody was going to get their. You can get weed from Colorado, but it's mostly indoor. It's hard to get larger quantity. It's more expensive. Everybody knew that like California was a place you could go and do this. My plan at first wasn't to go there and necessarily send it back to Maryland and all these other states, but it was really, I don't want to be necessarily dishonest. I think that was probably part of it, but I think that was more so my mind, like a stepping stone of like how I can, generate more capital and then take that and actually do something legitimate with this, right? I can, go and in my mind, I'm thinking like, how can I grow, like, get my own farm, start growing weed, just selling it in California and like create a livelihood. And so it wasn't long after that I had enough money to move out there, and I went and moved to California.
Wait, how long after that?
Within the like 6 months, probably.
So at this point, you were buying it from this guy, bringing it to your town, and basally selling it amongst your friends.
Yeah, more or less. But it went parabolic pretty quick. We're not talking about just 1 pound. Probably within 6 months of that first pound transaction, when I went up and used my friend's money to pool together to all go get, them all get their quarter pounds. Yeah. Within 6 months, I'm getting 100 pounds a week.
And how much money you're making a week within 6 months?
At that time, cannabis, weed was so much more expensive. Let's see, I might have been paying like $3,500 a pound back then, but to 32, then it would go down to like 3,200, and I was consistently making $500 to $600 a pound.
And how many pounds were you saying?
50 to 100 a week as an 18-year-old kid. It wasn't long before I had hundreds of thousands of dollars and didn't know where it came from, more or less. So it's like it was like this very dramatic like change in my life. Like I just went from more or less sleeping in the public bathrooms and staying in my friends' places and trying to find different like friends' basements I can like sneak into that they'll let me sleep at for the night, and got to be out before their parents are up, kind of thing. To all of a sudden, I've got more money than I know what to do with. And so obviously anything else I'd ever tried before, even like working as a busboy and like doing that stuff during those restaurant jobs. I mean, there was no comparison. I was like, I'm not going to go down this one route when the other one is clearly far more lucrative. And it's, there's this general idea amongst people that like, it's weed. Like the society's accepting it. It's becoming legalized. It's only going to be a matter of time, especially this is still when Obama was president. And so a lot of people really thought that he was going to legalize it before he left office.
Federally, yeah.
Yeah, like federally, because federal laws until what Trump just did recently, federal laws have not changed at all since 84.
Right.
And so, and crazy enough, they still don't really matter. This whole rescheduling, which I'm sure we'll get to later. Yeah. They just passed a law in the Supreme Court. Well, first off, when he signed that executive order and got them to change the law, it was non-retroactive, so it means it doesn't affect anybody.
Right, who's in prison right now for weed charges. I know.
And then,
yeah, we'll get there
no
for sure. So you were okay. So then 6 months, you hit hundreds of thousands of dollars more money than you knew you did to do with it, and you decided you were going to move to California.
Yeah, so I decided to move to California.
Why?
Because I knew not only there. First, I'm paying retail prices from a guy that's already bringing it over. And I'm starting to get an idea of what it really costs over there. If he's charging me $2,500 for a pound, I know he's getting them for $1,200.
Right.
And at that point in time, I guess like 6 months or a year later, I mean, it was pretty crazy how fast as states were becoming legal and there was starting to become a lot more like a larger supply and a lot more people involved in it. It didn't take long for the prices to start dramatically dropping. And also another thing that I realized is that like, how do I make my friends far more successful at what they're doing, right? Like if I can invest in these people and I can give them lower prices than they're gonna get from anywhere else, if I can do the same to my competition, all of a sudden I'm gonna have a far larger network.
Right.
And so I more or less started undercutting the market.
Yeah. So your friends were also selling weed. They were selling the weed that you were providing.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. I mean,
right.
and they'd always been kind of like obviously because I was a kid who was getting in trouble and smoking weed and skateboarding and stuff all through high school. I already hung out with kind of that crowd. I was already friends with the weed dealers and I knew all the people that were already doing, were selling weed more or less.
Right. Okay. So you arrived in California. Where did you go? And what was that like?
I moved to Santa Cruz. That's where I first went to. Yeah.
Because you knew, actually I hung out with an amazing, we did a story about black market weed and I spent a crazy night where there was a gigantic thunderstorm in this guy's, in Santa Cruz at the time. And we were staying in his backyard. He had, like a large grow of weed in his house and property. And it was all black market weed, unregulated weed. He tried to go legal and as you know, the regulations and the taxes, it was all very complicated and costly and it didn't work out. He didn't get the licenses he needed. And so he kept selling it illegally.
Yeah.
Essentially.
So that's a very common story.
So,
and Santa Cruz has really become the mecca of at least one of the larger places that a lot of the legal grows are, because you have all those old.
Yeah,
when
that's
you go south of Santa
too.
Cruz, you have like all like in Watsonville towards Monterey, you have all the old like agricultural areas. And there used to be so many. You'd see these if you drove down like the 101 or through the one that area, you would see all these like old abandoned like massive greenhouses. They have like they'd be like square acre greenhouses with like the like it'd be like an A-frame roof that would kind of go across the whole thing. And you'd see these old dilapidated ones. Now they're all full of cannabis because it's such a up in Humboldt, it's so much harder to get to people there. And it's so much harder to police.
Right. And this is all the legal farms, by the way. These are the ones that now, the weed is, belongs to big corporations and big cannabis companies. Oh, so you go up, you get to Santa Cruz, and then did you have any contacts there or did you start making contacts from scratch?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just started making contacts from scratch. I mean, I don't know. I'd always really been into skateboarding, so it's not really that hard to go someplace. And where
do you score your weed and then go from there?
Yeah, you know what I mean. And just like start meeting people through skateboarding was usually kind of a pretty easy way to kind of like make contacts and meet people. And everybody at least knows a guy who knows a guy, and it's such a small area that I mean, it didn't take long before I'd really made sufficient contacts there.
And then what did you build?
One of the first things I tried to build was, I mean, I was probably like 19 or 20 years old. I tried to build, I guess the first one was I had some greenhouses that were like up in like Boulder Creek. And this was before Prop 64. So this was back when it was still medicinal. So all you really had to do was go and get find an attorney and pay him some. It usually would be like however much you paid, there would be like a dollar amount for every client that they would give you, which would, I mean, it's like a total like arbitrary fake thing, just so
Totally
if the cops
fake.
show
Yeah.
up, it's just so if the police show up and they want to, or
You
the
have
fire
a piece of
department, they want to
paperwork.
count your plants. At that point in
Right.
time, you could have, I think it was, I can't remember what it was, it might have been 7 or 10 plants per patient, you know, and so
Right.
we'd have these massive binders, and you know, we
With
had
all
like
these-
10 hoop houses, just
Right.
you know, full of cannabis that was not going to any of these patients,
Right.
you know.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it was a crazy time.
It's interesting because you're seeing it from the business side. I remember we did a story about like just showing how easy it was to get one of these cards as if you were procuring it. But I had never thought about what it was like for you guys if you were raided and if you had to show some sort of paperwork. Why are you growing so much weed? Who are you selling this to?
Exactly.
So you actually had to have that paperwork.
All you had to do is have a binder. You just kept on spot.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the binder would be like, I mean, it wouldn't close. It'd be like this, you know. It'd be,
And it was all fake, full of fake names.
I mean, they were usually real people. I think.
Right,
I think it's
but
a
I mean,
whole
none of
database.
fake clients.
Yeah, they
essentially,
were never. I mean, the cannabis never went to them. It
Yeah.
wasn't like we had like
God.
some kind of like pipeline of making sure that it got directly delivered to these patients.
Right.
And that's how, I mean, that's how it is for everybody up there. There's nobody who's, I'm not gonna say nobody. I'm sure there are like, I know there are like legitimate, like people in that space that do provide cannabis to the people who have the medicinal cards and have some sort of like agreement set up with them. But most of the people up there are all at that time were that was how they would, you know, get carte blanche more or less to grow however much they wanted to.
And so that's what you were doing. So you started by having some greenhouses, which you paid for how? With the money that you brought from?
Yeah, with the money that I brought
Baltimore?
out there, and you know, invested a lot of money in greenhouses up there. I think had a mansion in San Francisco that we had filled with like 50 lights. And it was so funny at this point in time. It was back.
Oh, so you were doing indoor grows as well.
Yeah, I was into
warehouses.
Yeah, because a lot of it was like I would invest in these with that. I'd find growers, people who were like good, talented growers, and I would invest money, and we would have like some sort of profit sharing, and I would usually deal with like the distribution of it.
And you were shipping it all to the East Coast.
Well, it depends. Like a lot of the cannabis that we grew in California, we'd actually sell in California because if you and I are partners, hypothetically, and I'm taking responsibility for all of the product that belongs to both of us, and I'm getting more money for it, not only are you going to want to make sure you get more money for yours, I'm now responsible if anything happens to it. So in all reality, it was like there was like two things going on. You know, a lot of the cannabis that was being grown in California would stay in California, and you'd sell to brokers, and you don't have to charge what you know, you're really charging about the same prices that you're buying stuff for. So to a lot of people, that might not make sense, but just for like a risk liability aspect like that. And because that was really the trajectory I was trying to go on. I knew that there was only going to be so long that I could necessarily be sending weed out of the state. And it was really just trying to look at it as a way to get startup capital to go and do this, to really legitimize myself eventually. But
because you were thinking that this is going to become legal everywhere eventually, and I'm already setting myself to having this company, this cannabis company.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really,
which was everybody's plan at the time.
For sure. And it's one of those things where like, you know, that because it's federally illegal right now, you can't go get any kind of, I mean, short of you having like access to hedge fund, private equity financing, and venture capital financing, you know, you're not going to get a loan, you know?
No, you can't.
You can't. It's federally legal. You know,
yeah, so
any federally insured bank. I mean, I know there's credit unions that do work with cannabis companies, but any federally insured bank, they can't touch it.
Yeah. So because I did a story about black market weed in California, I remember some of the things, like some of these people that were working in the even in the cannabis, even people who had dispensaries legally, there was a lot of security around it because they were constantly being, I don't know if did you experience any of this? Some of them had bodyguards with them. I remember there's a dispensary not very far from my own house that it was so crazy number, like once a month they'd get, before they then finally got security, but once a month they'd have the owner of it had been, robbed at gunpoint and handcuffed and chained, and they took out the money from the business, but time and time again, even really when he had security and all of it, because you can't put money in the bank.
Exactly.
So you have to, that these businesses are full of cash.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember back before like Bitcoin had became what it is today. I remember a lot of the small dispensaries, they would have like a Bitcoin ATM because they couldn't because they couldn't take a card. Like you couldn't pay with Visa or MasterCard or whatever. Yeah. So what they would do is you would go, if you couldn't pay cash, they would, you could buy Bitcoin there at their ATM in the dispensary and pay them through cryptocurrency. Wow. I remember that was like a thing for a little while. And
so what did you do at the time? It was a cash business for you too. So what was it like? How did you make sure that cash was safe? And what were you doing with it? You can't put it in the bank. Where were you stuffing it?
I mean, Well, I mean, I guess because it's been long enough, there's statute of limitations are up. They got most of them, almost all of it anyway, between them and the attorneys. But I mean, at the time, buy precious metal and cryptocurrency and put away cash anywhere you can. I mean, I don't know. I lost a lot of cash too, because it's not like everything works out. But frequently, what kind of ended up causing me to go so far down the path of, instead of where I started out there, where maybe I'm just sending home, like Pelican cases in the mail with, 10 to 20 pounds in them per package, nothing super crazy, right? I ended from going from there to what ended up like the activity that I was doing that eventually led to my case. There's a big leap, but a lot of that happened because I tried to really break into the industry, especially post Proposition 64, when it had become recreationally legal in California. And I'd spent a lot of money on trying to get legitimate licenses and build legitimate grows. I remember there was a grow that, California is notorious for this, like at this point in time, where you'd have these local municipalities that knew that this was a cash cow and they could take advantage of these people. And there was no like federal or lawful protection a lot of these people had. I remember Calaveras County was a common place that had given all these people licenses that they paid for, and then they revoked them at the last minute. I remember I had paid for this license for a grow in Hollister, it's a town called Hollister. There was this artichoke farm that had, they called it a silo, but I mean, it was just really a big old barn. But I guess because it didn't have like a second story, or I don't know why the guy called it a silo, but it was really just a large barn. And I remember I had gotten this agreement that was cleared by the city council and spent a bunch of money to kind of grease the wheels to get this to happen. And we put in 150 lights in this place, all at the time, $1,000 plus Gavitas and expensive HVAC systems, and built a whole second story. So it was like all these different like 25 light rooms on the first floor, and then more on the second floor above this. Got a massive, I don't even remember how many kilowatt generators the generator we got. I mean, I'd spent a lot of money in this.
How much?
And
more or less?
Easily $500,000.
Oh wow!
And so.
And then what happened?
Well, as soon as we're ready to turn on the lights, mind you, I'm paying like $25,000 a month for just the rent at this place. And as soon as we get ready to turn on the lights,
meaning you had a license.
We had a license. Yeah, it was legit. Legal to operate.
It
was totally legit. It was cleared with city council. They knew about the property. We had actually gone to them. We paid a bunch of money, and we'd gone to them and asked them to find us, because we knew that now that it was legal and they were going to be allowing cultivation in their county. To find us properties, like a list of properties that we could potentially use that were zoned appropriately. That
so you could expand and build more of these. Yeah.
Well, this was before we got in the first one, right? That's where we found that one from.
That's how you found that one.
Yeah. And so at any rate, I'd spent all this money in building this thing out. Now that they all of a sudden, just coincidentally, right before we're going to turn on the lights and actually just, put some plants in here and really start growing, all of a sudden we get zoned inappropriately. Now we're no longer zoned correctly to cultivate cannabis. And so now I've spent all this money. I'm hemorrhaging money every month to keep this place open, keep it afloat.
Why do you think that's happening?
Oh, I know why it happened. I mean, it was because of the guy that we rented the property on. He wanted it. So, it's a small town. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they just saw a ton of people. And you think he paid this into
for sure.
Yeah, and I'm sure that now he's probably still using that property and probably, made off. I mean, this was a common thing. It wasn't like, this isn't like a one-off situation that I dealt with. A lot of people dealt with this all over the state. A lot of people dealt with it in Hollister. It was
that is so fucked up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I'm like a 20-year-old kid, so they just look at me as this kid with this money and easy to take advantage of, and there's no recourse or anything I can do about it. And so, of course, I walked away from it. But after going through that, I just became a little disillusioned with the whole idea of being able to go fully legit, at least in this way, right? Like the only thing that's making me money at this point is sending it out of state, then and even like maybe growing the stuff that was in state with these not licensed grows that we're selling it in the state just to brokers and people driving up from LA or whatever. And at that point, I'm still a young kid, and I don't know, I had the whole defiance disorder thing already going on. And so I think I just became just solely focused on, all right, well, like, how can I make the most money out of this so that by the time this thing is over with and there's, no money to be had in it, and it's all completely controlled by, now, I mean, you have all these massive cannabis corporations that are publicly traded, and John Boehner is the CEO of the largest one. Right. It's crazy, right? But at any rate, like I saw that this was clearly what was going on in my early 20s. And I know what it's like to be homeless. I know what it's like to have nothing. And I know that this might be my only shot to ever make any kind of money that I could potentially go and buy a business or try to put into something to have like a safe livelihood for the rest of my life.
I mean, if the system is fucking you, you're going to try your best to circumvent the system, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more or less.
Essentially, that's the case. Okay, so what did you do then?
At that point, I just started growing it larger and larger. Now no longer am I sending USPS flat rate boxes and maybe like a moving pod every now and again. Now we started getting into like tractor trailers and filling up tractor trailers. And here's the thing is that like I developed such a network out there at this point that I'd lost a lot of money on losses. Like there'd been times where things got lost, didn't make it, people didn't pay, just issues with it being like a business where there's very little recourse. And, or just like regular early 20-year-old kids, not violent and never carried guns or did anything like that. And so like there was never, somebody didn't pay. It was just, we stopped doing business with them. But because I always paid my debts, like if I ever owed, again, I would deal with suppliers, a lot of the, like Vietnamese and Mexicans and anybody who really had like access to large quantities of cannabis in California, I had connections through, and I always paid. It didn't matter. Like if I lost or I took a loss or whatever, it didn't matter. Like I always paid my bills because I knew my credit line was so much more important than than just like trying to salvage whatever money I could get out of whatever deal. And so because I knew I had access to like unlimited quantities, I might have lost money on certain stuff that I'd sent out at times. I might have taken losses on, there was times where like the truck got popped with a bunch of money coming across the country, or at least that was what we were told, and it didn't matter what happened because I lost the money. And so there was just, I don't know, they got to this point where like I just knew that I had unlimited access to whatever I wanted, as much as I wanted of it. And I knew I had at least a substantial network in Baltimore. And at this point, I started meeting people from other parts, like through skateboarding and through other people I met in California, and just through just generally like trying to network a little bit, either if it's like going to fish shows or whatever, right? It's just like, meeting people that I knew were like in the space, that I started developing a network just around the country and started, we started sending it started off with loading up tractor trailers. You send freight and, maybe put 500 to 1,000 pounds there. And
holy shit. It was like hidden with stuff? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of what we would do, we had a couple different ways, and it kind of like progressed, right? Like we're talking about after that grow that had happened in Hollister that I kind of got screwed on. It started progressing to different means and methods of getting it to other states. And you start, I don't know, figuring out which ways work and what don't. I remember there was a time, I remember I was so mad when that show Ozark came out, because they had showed this guy. Remember how Jason Bateman hid his money in a pontoon boat?
In a what?
In a pontoon boat. You remember that?
I don't. Okay. I actually watched it. Was I watched season 1. Was it in season 1?
Yeah, I think it was in season 1. Yeah, okay. He hid a bunch of money in a pontoon boat, and that was like something we did. Like we took a pontoon boat and we like cut off the pontoons and we stuffed it with weed, and then we got a TIG welder and welded it back on.
Yes,
and so we would shrink wrap it and send it across the country. We would get these big knack boxes. There's like they're the brand's knack, like KNAACK.
Yeah.
And we would get these knack boxes, these big job boxes that were like electricians' job cabinets that would, you could fit 500 plus pounds in them. And it got to a point where we've got 4 or 5 of them in a freight load, all crated up, and go drop them off to the freight yard and send them across the country. We had this crazy like flatbed. It was like a flatbed pull behind trailer. And we would you have to put like a certain kind of car on it. You can't just put like a Honda CRV, because who's going to, it's going to be bizarre when you got a trailer with California plates and like a car that like nobody would.
A shitty car that nobody would want.
Yeah. If they were, they would send it on like an 18-wheeler, with like stacked up with a bunch of other vehicles. And so we knew this guy he worked on the film set. He's from the Valley in LA, and he worked on like all these different film sets, and he was like a master fabricator. And so we had a trailer that had these actuators in it, kind of like hydraulics, but electrically powered. And you'd take off the rails. I mean, it's like just a flatbed, right? So it doesn't look like it's hiding anything. So it's not like a horse trailer. It looks like a flatbed. So it looks like there's nothing there. And if you would take off like one of the blinker lights and you pull these wires out, and you'd hook it up to like a car battery jumper, like the thing you use to jump your car battery. Yeah. So we'd hook that up, and all of a sudden the actuators would, they would
move
open right up,
and all of it was stuff.
And this couldn't hold that much, right? Mine can only hold like 300 pounds, but that was like how we'd bring the money back. And so obviously if I just sent you.
Smart. So you'd send like a container with the weed there, but the money would come back.
Exactly. But in the meantime, because it's all credit, it's all a credit-based system. Like the only way that I could have ever done and moved as much weed as I was moving is that if I was making guys have to cash it out as soon as I sent it to New York or Baltimore or wherever, they what's going to stop them from coming to California and doing it themselves, right? How can I make it worth your while to not have to come to California and instead have a consistent, steady supply of always having, never running out, right? And always having it at still such a fair price that, you don't need to come to California. You might have a business, you might have a family, kids. Like you don't want to come fly out with your money and figure out a way to come bring it back just because it's cheaper in California. How can I get you like a great supply of, whatever indoors you want? Then you have like some of the cheaper commercial indoors and light depths and outdoor, like a perfect mix, whatever you want, and have it consistently brought to you to make sure that you don't come to California, but instead you always are dealing with me. It's going to be credit. And I'm getting it on credit anyway. So at least a lot of it. I mean, of course, it got to the point where like. So
you're basically, so people understand, you're giving people the drugs before they even pay you, so that they're able to sell it first, make the money, and then give you what they owe. Which is, by the way, the cartel business model as well. You know that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I do know that because it's interesting. I had gotten a situation when I was in my early 20s with these guys who at the time I didn't realize it, but I mean, obviously they were cartel affiliated, and they had sent me a bunch of stuff that wasn't what it was supposed to be. Right? Yeah. Like I went and reviewed it and looked at what it was supposed to be before they loaded it up, and it was all like decent. It was just like some like Mexican outdoor. It wasn't like it didn't have seeds, but it was it was just like commercial outdoor that was like Blue Dreams and like old green cracks and just AK-47, like old strains have been around a long time. People didn't really want.
We're talking about cannabis.
Just cannabis strains, but these weren't like the newest, like heady strains. Like this was just kind of very commercial outdoor, but it was at such a cheap price that sure, I'll take these on credit and I can get them moved for you. And of course, when it showed up, they were all not what they're supposed to be. I mean, they were all like just. Oh man, I mean, there was so much seeds in it, and it was garbage. There was nothing I could do with it. No way I could sell it. Right. And I realized at the time these guys' plan to put me in debt to them. Yeah, because I saw how they'd done this to a friend of mine. See, I never did this. It wasn't like my business model wasn't like how I can get people in debt to me and make sure that they don't ever pay off their bill and they're always dealing with me. It wasn't like that. It was like, how can I make it convenient for you to not have to come to California because I'm going to get you the same quality.
In your case, it's a positive, not a negative. They would do it. They would do it more. They would force you, but they would also like, if you go to them and ask them, you want to go do business with them and want to deal with cocaine with them, for example, you want to supply cocaine somewhere in America, they will send you cocaine or they'll give you cocaine on credit, but they eventually also send you fentanyl and say, now you have to start, and it's also on credit. And then you're forced to start selling fentanyl, even though that wasn't your plan all along, or maybe you don't even know how to sell fentanyl, or that's not what you want to be doing. And that happens a lot.
I'm certain of it because I'm dealing with probably like the softer kind of cartel guys. And I wasn't like dealing with them. It was just like, this early point in time in my 20s when I'm still trying to feel out which people to deal with, what connections to deal with, who's worthwhile.
Right. Did you sell that weed, by the way?
Well, I didn't sell it, but I paid them off for it.
You paid
I took
without
hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of losses on that because I knew what they were trying to do. I knew that they sent me garbage that they knew I wouldn't be able to sell because the whole plan was how they can get me in debt to them in a way where this garbage seeded crap isn't going to be worth anything anyway. Right. But so how can they take something that's already garbage and force it upon me, know that I'll never be able to sell it, but then now I'm owned by them. I'll never be able to pay it off.
Right. And so the next load is probably going to be fentanyl or something like that, something that you never wanted to sell in the first place.
I don't know about these guys. I don't think that there was never like any discussions of or like. I think that they were like primarily weed guys. Like I'm sure that there's like tiers in like the cartel structure of who deals with what. And I never really got the vibe that these guys were like dealt with harder drugs necessarily, but
you would be shocked.
I hear you.
From the people that I've met.
I hear you. And I'm sure that like maybe if they weren't then, they totally are now because there's not money in it anymore. Like nobody's
right. Yeah, I know.
I'm sure that like things have changed for them, but at the time I could tell that it was clearly like that was a ploy to get me in debt to them. It's this early,
so they can get you to work for them, and but you pay them off, and so that didn't happen. But okay, so but you were doing the same thing, which was very smart in your own way. You weren't trying to get people to become indebted to you, but you were trying to make people still be happy with the way that it was going, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a logistics network. Like, how can I make it so convenient for you
that he'll never have to come to California and start and steal this business from me.
Exactly, and so it's so like I would obviously try to find ways. So like, how can I provide like the fairest prices, the highest, quality of. And like an array of what you're looking for. I mean, it got to the point where I had like a private Telegram channel, and I would always be posting. I mean, I guess it was like later on, because eventually we got into using these FedEx stores, and I don't want to like put the game out there too much, because I'm sure that these people are still doing it. We've reported on this.
The FedEx was one of the biggest distributors of cannabis from California when I was reporting on it a few years ago.
Yeah, some partners of mine, these guys I was associating with and doing business with, they opened their own FedEx stores, and so. They realized, like, if you pay FedEx like premier overnight, make it look like it's going from a business to a business, they're so prioritized in keeping your business and making you pay. Because I mean, we've been paying thousands of dollars per package to get it overnight to the other side of the country, and I think that they're so prioritized to keep your business, like FedEx is. I mean, they're a publicly traded company. Their whole bottom line is like, how can they increase benefit for their shareholders? If you're paying for like the highest tier of their service and large frequency, I don't think they even look at it. I'm sure that like the stuff that if you send it through FedEx and you put it on ground, then it's going to take 5 days. I'm sure there's some inspection. I mean, they're a private company. Well, I mean, they're a publicly traded company, they're not the government. So they're not like USPS. They can just open your package if they want to. But I think that when you're paying them, when you're paying, thousands of dollars just to ship the package.
It's not in their interest to be looking what's inside that package. They want to make money.
Yeah. So we ended up eventually. That was eventually where things moved. The trucks would still go on, but that's a process. It's a process.
Then wait, did you open FedEx stores? Or
no, I didn't open them.
But you were using them.
Yeah, I was using them. I knew some guys that owned their own FedEx stores. And
so at the peak of your business, how much weed were you shipping from California to the East Coast? Or anywhere.
It was more than just East Coast eventually. I mean, once the FedEx thing came about, now it was like we can get it. Now we don't have to worry about truck, using. I mean, we still sent the trucks to primarily like Baltimore, Philadelphia area, which was like where like the majority of my network was and the people I knew. But between Baltimore, Philadelphia, and a lot of stuff from Philadelphia then get taken up to New York. But once we started doing the FedEx stuff, it expanded the whole country, because now it's like I don't have to worry about trying to put together a massive freight load. You might be a guy in Florida and you only want 50 pounds, but I can send you that in one shipment and then get it to you overnight. Right. And so, I mean, we had a whole way at FedEx where we'd put these packages together, and each package could hold. I mean, the way that they looked. I mean, as I said, I don't want to like assuming I don't want to blow the game up for these guys if they're still doing their thing, right? But the way that these packages looked, like their awkward shape, you would never have thought that it was weed. We would have thought that it was because of like there are these long, elongated, kind of bizarre looking packages. You would have figured it had to have been something different. You wouldn't. It just
like a poster kind of thing, or was it like a photo, more like a rolled up. Was it rolled up?
Yeah, I mean,
you're trying to be vague.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Trying to get you to rat.
No, yeah, definitely not that. I just don't want to.
I'm trying to get you to tell me what.
No, I understand. It was just they were just very different shaped. It wasn't just like your stereotypical box. And so we would send these in 3-part packages. So, and then sometimes if you didn't have enough addresses, we would send FedEx and UPS on the same day. Yeah. So now, boom, we just got 100 pounds to your house overnight.
Oh shit. Okay, so what a peak? How much? Yeah, so peak.
Man, like out of state, not California, because there's still like a lot of brokering going on in California.
All of it. Give me all of it. Like how much money were you making? How much were you selling? And how much was being shipped across the country?
I mean, thousands of pounds a month.
Thousands of pounds a month were being shipped across the country.
At least 2,000 pounds a month probably being shipped across the country. And then
this all came out in your case.
Yeah, it all came out in my case. Okay, I mean, the feds they're well aware. I mean, they seized a 7-figure sum, and they
from you.
I mean, throughout the not specifically on me or from but it was definitely evidence in the case.
It was 7 figures in more than $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think they got like something around $2 million in cash.
In cash.
Yeah, it was just re-up money.
It was just what?
It was the money from. Like it was just the money from one transaction. You know what I mean? Like this was like if you'd sent if I'd sent these guys 2,000 pounds and obviously if you're getting 2,000 pounds and paying around $900 to $1,200 a pound at that time. I think some of the higher end stuff would go for $1,500 then. I mean, now the market's completely bottomed out. I'm sure this stuff probably only costs $500 today, but then, I mean, it's probably around, it was around $2 million.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And this is just from one transaction.
Yeah, it's just one transaction.
One shipment. And holy shit. And where do they find that money?
So the crazy thing is, so we'd sent out the flatbed trailer I was telling you about. We'd put like a classic car or something on it. And I remember I gave the guy Chris that I'd lived with that take me in when I was younger. I remember we put this like Jaguar on it, and he thought it was like the coolest thing, like this James Bond kind of car. And I just told him he could have it. And we, just put something else back on the trailer for the money to come back, kind of thing. And anyway, that trailer I was telling you about, we'd sent out the trailer to go pick up the money from the last shipment we'd sent, which was probably as I said, it was probably around 1,500 to 2,000 pounds. Whatever we could fit in 4 to 5 of those knack boxes, all crated up and just sent out on a tractor trailer. Yeah. And I would never tell the guys the exact ETA of when the driver would be there. I mean, I would tell them what day ahead of time before we left, like be at the warehouse. Could be like warehouses rented all over, Baltimore area, some in Philadelphia, New Jersey. And they were primarily just for places for these trucks to come in. You can't just be doing this in the backyard. You gotta be able to back a truck into somewhere that has a door and be able to hide what's going on. And so they were all at the warehouse waiting for they had the money all vacuum sealed and put in these Mylar bags, and they had that all ready for the for the flatbed that could only carry like 300 pounds or so, but it was really just something for them. It was like something for you to have in the meantime while I try to get this out. I need to get the money to be able to get you another load, but I sent you here these 300 pounds on the trailer that we really use just primarily for bringing the money back.
Got it.
And so anyway, at that point, the feds, so I guess, were already on us. And somebody was cooperating, and they knew about the shipment that was coming in, but the driver, he had hit some I don't know, some bad weather outside of like Pittsburgh coming across I-80, and so I didn't tell anybody in Maryland. They just showed up at the warehouse thinking the truck was going to arrive that day, and that was the day the feds raided. So the truck is now like stranded in Pennsylvania trying to figure out what to do because he can't go to Maryland. But the thing is, now all that money that was getting ready to be put on that truck, that was all what they had got because it was getting ready to be brought back.
Oh, so that's the money they got.
That was the money they got. Yeah, it was just the money that was coming back for the last load that had been sent to them.
I mean, it's an insane amount of money that you were making at the time. Tell me, like, what was your life like? What were you spending it on?
I mean, honestly,
I always ask this because it's always mind-boggling.
And it's crazy because it's like, it's all gone, and in a lot of ways, it's almost like a blessing. I know that sounds crazy, but I'd really become very deluded in my thinking because I had this whole and I think I justified a lot of it because of knowing what it was like to not have anything. I felt like I had to squeeze every last drop out of this while I could do it. And then in that in itself, you become very money centric and very obsessed with it. And you think that you're not, but looking back, obviously that was all I cared about. All I cared about is how I can make as much money as possible. I'm sacrificing most of the good times in my early 20s that I could be traveling the world or doing any of the things I'd want to be doing and I would have vacations ruined every time I did travel, go somewhere because I'd be so focused on trying to make sure that, everything was running seamlessly as it's supposed to be. Right. And so I would become
let me just say something here is that if going back to your fitting in school too, right? When you go through that experience of not feeling that you fit, and part of it was because of not having the same kind of money that other people in your school had, then you become obsessed with making money so that you can sort of,
I suppose, and
it's fill up this gap that you had when you were younger.
Yeah, I think a lot of it at first was more about knowing that I'd never had any other chance to make that kind of money before, and then that became an easy justification for letting it rule my life. And I was really living very devoid, of any kind of purpose and meaning in my life. I was really using a lot of drugs at this point.
Oh, you were?
Far harder drugs. It was I was using a lot of ketamine. I got really, really into ketamine, and I was just
every day.
Oh yeah, I was probably doing it every day. You know what I mean?
Shots or what? How are you?
I mean, just I was snorting ketamine, but I was just doing a lot of it, and it just became
What did it do to you?
I think because I was probably just so stressed out a lot of times trying to deal with all this stuff and juggling all the time. It just totally checked me out. I don't know. It's like psychedelic Xanax, it has a very psychedelic and profound aspect to it.
It's what Matthew Berry died from.
Yeah.
In his case,
Well, I think he drowned, but which because it incapacitates you.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's a bizarre drug because it's like it's like very hard to overdose on it actually because it actually elevates your heart rate even though it puts you under. And that's why it's like so commonly used by paramedics and like battlefield medics and stuff like that. But it's very addictive. You know, it has some serious chemical hooks. And I was just, I don't know. Because I've become so obsessed with making money and it being the main driving force in my life. And that I just really, I don't know, like a lot of my relationships, they were, I didn't value them the way that I should have. Everything was always quantified to a dollar amount. And I thought because like I was giving a lot of it away and generous and always giving homeless people money and always buying the dinner tab that all of a sudden that made me a good guy, but it didn't, you know? And it's bizarre. It's like one of those things I realize now that like the only form of currency that really matters is like attention and time, you know, because like if you can't notice something, if you don't have the attention for it, you can't love it. And if you don't have the time, you know, to spend on something, you can't love it. And yeah, I was just totally, I just become very focused on like this illusion of things that didn't matter. And I don't know. And like, I didn't think I was like materialistic, but I was clearly materialistic and I was really unhappy. You know?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And your relationships become transactional, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And also you kind of, you're like setting yourself up all the time to be like taken advantage of by people because people only look at you for what you have or what they can get from you or what, and like you're valuing yourself that same way. And so, yeah, it was just, yeah, I mean, I certainly had more money than I knew what to do with and didn't exactly invest it all that well. And so it is what it is. I mean, I feel like I'm far better off for it now.
Yeah, I think that people looking from the outside, if they look at your story, they think, wow, boy, that must have been such an adventure. Must have been the best years of your life. You had all this cash, you're running this big operation. You're probably like super cool amongst your friends, but you're portraying it at actually quite sad time of your life.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, looking back on it, there was obviously a lot of fun times, a lot of stuff. But when I look back on it, I mean, I'm far healthier and a better mind state today. Not having that, you know. I'm not saying there aren't a lot of people with money that are great people, but I've definitely noticed from my experience that like it's not like it definitely takes away. Like you can only focus so much attention on certain things, and yeah, it's just I don't know because I've become so obsessed with it, and I felt. And a lot of it's like that survival instinct, not just because of what I've been through before, but because when you know you're doing something that's only going to last for so long, you know that like you're like running on the hamster wheel.
Right. Yeah. Ticking time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you got to get everything you can out of it. And so it's like I was really sacrificing a lot of things I should have been enjoying my life that weren't so focused on that. Did
your parents know this was happening? That what you were working on? What you were?
Yeah, they didn't know to the extent, right? Like it's not like my parents knew that I was, you know, obviously. As I started becoming more independent and was taking care of myself in the sense of like, you know, I mean, obviously like a lot of the drug use, I wasn't taking care of myself, but the, you know, like just being like independent and like independently wealthy, it was a lot easier for me to like reconnect with my parents. And as I got older, you know, you start to understand, like what I was doing at the time. And when I was a kid, that had led that to them sending me to these wilderness programs.
Right.
And all that
what were
stuff.
you doing to them as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Like what I'd done to them, what I put them through. And so like, obviously I wanted to reconnect with them and we became a lot closer, but like, I think in their mind, right, during that time, my early 20s, they thought I'd moved to California, started growing weed out there, had like a legitimate company and was just, you know, it was a part of this new fledgling industry.
Right. And they had no qualms about that. They thought it was, he's happy, he's making money.
Yeah, I don't think it was like their ideal. Like it wasn't like, oh man, like my parents probably never even smoked weed. I know my dad never has, but I think it was like one of those things where it wasn't what they necessarily wanted for me, but it was so much better than what they thought they were going to get out of me at some point. You know, like by the time I was like really getting in trouble in my teenage years, and like it really looked like, you know, like I was going nowhere, and you know, might not live to see 20 kind of thing. Right. And which is a common thing. A lot of those kids I was hanging out with before I'd had that kind of arrested development taken out of, you know, taken to those programs and was kind of removed to those situations. A lot of those kids have all died from opiate use. Yeah. And so I can easily see what could have happened. And I can easily see what my parents were worried about happening. And I think that, yeah, I don't know. So I as I got older, I at least started to realize that. And I also came to understand how valuable relationships with your family are, you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah, your mom is incredibly important to where you are at these today, and I want to talk about that as well. But okay, so how did it all implode?
I mean, this is going to sound really bizarre. And like, I don't know how much you're going to believe this or if anyone's going to believe this. Maybe anyone who's experienced 5-MeO DMT will maybe understand this.
And explain. So 5-MeO DMT is a drug that comes from frogs in Mexico, mainly.
Yeah,
right?
the Sonoran Desert toad.
Yeah.
And so and I know this sounds really bizarre. It's just the timing's really crazy. And like anyone who's gone through this, like it's a very profound experience. And it's just really interesting that
so it's a psychedelic substance.
Yeah.
So people
very
know.
psychedelic. It's a psychedelic substance that I mean, other people have different experiences. I had a really traumatic experience. It's a very, very powerful psychedelic, having any sort of like toxins and like bad stuff in your system. And I'm in Vegas way longer than I was supposed to be because I just couldn't leave, and just doing all these drugs, taking ecstasy and doing cocaine and ketamine every day. And anyway, I knew I had to come back to this thing. So I flew back the day before. And so I've got all this bad stuff in my system, and my intentions aren't right. And I went into this and I had an awful experience. I mean, like I was like writhing on this guy's floor in pain.
Oof.
And, but it was crazy. Like I had this like sudden awareness afterwards, like the next 2 weeks that like my life was about to dramatically change, and that I needed to get my affairs in order. I needed to get myself clean. I needed to stop using drugs. I needed to stop doing what I was doing. I needed to get everything together. And I totally ignored. All I did was continue to do more and more ketamine to kind of like check out from it. But like now, like the light switch was on. Like I knew that something was going to happen. And ironically enough, the dominoes started falling right after that. I mean, like, look, I was obviously living in a house of cards anyway. It's not like I'm sitting here saying that this necessarily caused it, but it is just strange timing, you know.
A lot of people talk about that, right?
Yeah,
people who have done not just ayahuasca as well, any sort of psychedelic. Yeah,
but definitely like the dimethyltryptamine, like DMT and 5-MeO DMT. Like anyone who's done it, like a lot of people, like it's like a life-changing thing. Like I don't know, it's dramatic. It's a very dramatic experience, and just I don't know, like it's coincidentally, it's just bizarre that like right after that happened, and obviously I went into it with the worst intentions. I was like probably at my absolute low, right? Like the lowest of just like my like quality of being a human being. Right after that happened, the dominoes started falling, and people started getting raided, but I'm like totally ignoring it, and it wasn't like directly people I was dealing with directly, but it was like people down the line. And so, I mean, everyone thought, oh, fine, we'll just stop dealing with them and we'll just go and deal with, continue to do our thing, and nothing's happening. It's not a big deal. And then, yeah, I mean, it probably wasn't 6 months later. The feds did like I think they raided like 15 places all at the same time.
Where were you at the time?
I was with my family in Portugal, ironically.
You were on vacation in
Portugal.
I was on
vacation. Yeah. We just gotten there. And
was it sort of one of the first vacations with your family that you were taking?
Yeah, it was probably cool. The first, like all of us together, like my sister and my mom, my dad and I.
Had you invited them to that vacation?
Well, I think we discussed it probably, I don't know, maybe like 9 months prior. I think we'd like gotten the tickets and like planned out the reservations of where we were going to stay and like where we were going to go.
It's funny that it's my country, Portugal. Yeah. And so, okay, so you get there and it was, you had just landed or a couple of days after.
I was probably there a day, and then had found out on the phone that like all these places had been raided.
Who called you?
Chris had. Yeah.
So that was your partner.
Yeah. Well, this was interesting. It's kind of like, I felt like this kind of like obligation to him for a really long time. And so there was some stuff I didn't realize were going on in the meantime. I had felt, because like I was homeless and I didn't have anything and Chris had taken me in, I had always felt this kind of like obligation to him. And sometimes it's interesting like how like sometimes when the power dynamic switches in relationships, how that affects people, because they don't look at it necessarily the same way you do. I'm sure that like I was like a charity case, and so I think yeah, anyway, sorry. So so
you think you went from like being a charity case to being sort of in more of a position of power, right?
Now it's like I'm providing like all this, like I kind of consolidated my network in Baltimore and in Virginia, Baltimore, New York, the whole like East Coast area, like that I was sending a lot of, like obviously we're sending the FedEx stuff in other places, and we'd still send some of the FedEx stuff there, but like that predominantly like the freight that we were sending out, we'd send to Baltimore, and like I'd kind of like made him the point guy. I was like, listen, I'm gonna make you, like I run all of my people like through you, And so more or less, right, like he's now in this position where he's distributing thousands of pounds to all these people that weren't necessarily his network, but they got to go through him. And I'm essentially like telling him, like, look, all these people that I deal with and I'm charging this price, I'm going to give it to you at a point cheaper. So all you got to do is take it, deal with the inventory, get it to them, collect the money back, and, you're going to make a point on every single one. And so, it's, 0.2 points on top of what you're already making. I mean, it was a lot of money. And I didn't realize this at the time, but he's taking this money and he's coming out to California on his own. And so he sends back and thinks he can send his own freight. And so long story short, I didn't know this until later on. I get my discovery and I really see what happened to my case. But he had sent this like freight from, I guess, from somewhere in California that had, I guess it must have been, it wasn't even anything crazy. I mean, it must have been like 800, it might have been like 200 something pounds. And it got stopped by Homeland Security in Tennessee. And he never told me. Never said, hey, like, I had this issue. I sent this stuff out. Because obviously he didn't want me to know. I'm going to look at it like, dude, what? You're doing this. Look, it's one thing if you're doing this with your own money, but like we got like a 7-figure tab right now.
Right. Yeah.
And anyway, so he had sent that out and it got popped. And so obviously he's getting investigated.
Of course. Yeah. So now the feds are all over him.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm still sending him stuff. We're in direct communication. And I mean, anyway, so that was like one of those things that kind of like led to this all happening. But he was the one that had called me and told me that like we got an issue.
Like all our places are being raided. All our
places just got raided. The feds got all the money, and you should get an attorney.
And then it's
always a bad thing when your friends are telling you to get an attorney. Like, why do I need an attorney?
Shit.
What do you mean? They called you.
And then you did. You got an attorney.
I did, yeah. And I didn't even tell my
name. And so
you
think he said...
They all testified against me at the end of the day.
Oh, he did. He went in court and testified against you.
They all did, yeah. It's all right.
Everyone who worked with you.
Let's see. There was... everyone who worked with me, a lot of people didn't get caught up in my indictment, right? The only people that got caught up in my indictment are the people I've worked with in Maryland directly, right? You know what I mean? Right. Because, I went to trial. So it was the case... There was the people they were investigating in Maryland because it was like the Maryland Fed, like it was, it was DEA out of Maryland. And really it was kind of bizarre. It was really like a task force kind of situation. It was like the DEA working with like these local county sheriffs that had like a drug task force because they're on I-95, which is like a big drug corridor. And they obviously get a lot of federal funding to combat drugs. And they decided that going after us for cannabis was a priority. Right. And so. Okay.
So then you're in Portugal with your family. You get this call from Chris. You contact the lawyer.
No, not until I got back into the United States. For my mind, I'm thinking this: like, there might not be a long time before I can get back in the States, and I don't have the I don't right now. Like, I'm not in a. Most people that are planning on fleeing the country, if they're already out of the country when it happens, they're like, "Oh man, cool, I'm already here."
Yeah.
But I was on a family vacation. It's not like I brought money with me to be able to survive as a fugitive. So I'm thinking in my mind, I got to get back as soon as possible and figure out, I got to figure out how I can get my affairs in order and get all my money together and release what can be salvaged and what's remaining. And we're going to, I got to get out of the country.
So where did you fly to?
I flew right back into, I believe, I went straight back to San Francisco, flew into SFO, but I flew back and had a layover somewhere. I couldn't remember. I can't remember like where I came through.
Yeah,
I think I came through Dulles. It might have been where the flight came back.
Were you afraid that maybe your
name
was going to be at the?
I definitely was afraid that they might arrest me then and there. But had no issues. Made it right through. And it was kind of one of those things where no one else been arrested. This is the weird thing, right? This is how the feds are building a case. Is like if they raid a bunch of people and take all these things, right? And you have to understand these guys. I might have not been selling anything other than cannabis, but these guys were selling other drugs. Not necessarily like your stereotypical hard drugs like cocaine and like heroin or fentanyl, but like a lot of these guys are like people who go to, as I said, like Fish and Disco Biscuits concerts. Right. It's a drug. Like, a lot of people do drugs there, right? So you got like all the ecstasy people and ketamine and LSD. They've got lots of LSD, right? And that's a drug that the feds normally take really seriously.
Yeah, very seriously.
And so when they raided these guys' houses, they found not just cannabis and money, but I think one guy had like a gram or two LSD.
Wow.
And he never went to prison, but they found a lot of drugs, and so of like other things that you would think would have been higher priority than cannabis, because it was interesting how like all these guys only had to plead guilty to the cannabis case, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I went to trial and like they wanted to the cannabis was their big priority, because at the end of the day in the Fed's mind it's like the cannabis laws haven't changed, right? The Cole memorandum might have came around with Obama in like the Obama years to legally protect like licensed cannabis operators that are following the state laws, but like we're not doing that. I mean, it might have been like an attempt of something I was trying to do, but at this point, obviously we've steered farther away from that. And in the Fed's eyes, right, like the cannabis is just until recently was a Schedule I, right? It's a higher priority drug than cocaine or fentanyl, because you can get those still in medicinal manners. I mean, when I was first fighting my case, I think it was only a year afterwards that they'd actually upped fentanyl from a Schedule III to a Schedule II. Yeah. Because it used to be very low priority.
I don't think most people know this. Yeah. That at one point, it was
Schedule III. It was the same as like Tylenol, codeine, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. Okay, so you then came to so you get first, you get your affairs in order. You're basically trying to do what?
Which took some time.
Getting the money.
Well, yeah,
together?
I'm trying to get money, and now nobody wants to deal with me, right? Because now I'm like I'm a pariah, right? Because everyone looks at me like, you know, all these people that I'm dealing with, I think that they're my friends. I think that we have this like some sort of like, you know, loyalty or fealty to one another. But I mean, really, it's just a money making enterprise. And now the gig's up. Right. Like we've made all this money together, but now I'm a liability. So
of course, because you're being investigated. So they
investigated by the feds. Yeah, absolutely.
They have their eyes on you. Yeah.
Conveniently enough, a lot of them are holding a lot of my money.
Right.
And so like these guys with the trailer, because the trailer never got popped, right? We sent it up to like somewhere near Boston and drop off that weed and pick up a bunch of money coming back. And now all of a sudden the trailer got popped too. And
whoa,
it could never happen. Come on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was never my discovery. That never happened.
So
right?
you never got that money.
No, of course not. Right. But like these guys, I mean, they're looking at it like, all right, well, the gig's up and you know, and he's made all this money and we're not gonna be able to work with him anymore. And we got to take what we can get. I mean, that's just the nature of the nature of the game.
But you were able to get some money together.
I had some, yeah. I mean, I'd certainly taken a lot of losses through all this stuff, but I mean, we've been doing this long enough that there was definitely money left over that was a priority for me to want to get back into the country before leaving.
Right. And you're not going to tell me where you was hiding?
I mean, it wasn't like hiding in any kind of like crazy places. It was in, you know, rent an apartment and put it in somebody else's name and, you know, just leave it in there and never really, you know, I moved some furniture in, but never really spend much time there. It was, I mean, that was like a common thing. We had stash houses for weed, stash houses for places to put money. It wasn't like it wasn't like buried in some crazy place or anything like that. You know?
Out in the woods, under a big rock.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you fled, and then you decided
well, that was a whole process. It took a lot of time to try to get the money together that I wanted to get, and nobody's been arrested yet, and things are getting weird, and so, but it's getting weird because there's like a lack of action, you know, and so. Obviously, this is like the whole grand jury stuff's all going on at this point, but I don't really know that. And I contacted this attorney. He was one of the guys who represented El Chapo. And I'm not trying to relate myself to him, but it was just
which one? Do you know his name?
Eduardo Balarezo.
Oh wow, he's a well-known attorney. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I contacted him, and I didn't even tell him my name.
And so you contacted him and said, "What?
I told him I potentially might have a problem. I want to figure out if you can find out if I do." Kind of thing. And so I wouldn't even tell him my name. And I met him and I paid a $50,000 retainer. And then he went and talked, I guess, to connections, people he had, and was able to figure out that there was, I mean, obviously he's not doing this. I want to preface this with, he's not doing this under any sort of form or fashion of trying to prevent me from doing what I'm supposed to do.
He's trying to represent you.
He's trying to represent me and just figure out if I have the case, right?
Yeah.
I'm not telling this guy, hey, I want to know if I should go on the run or not. Like, there was no explicit thing like that. I just wanted to figure out if he can figure out my name, then I know I have a problem. And so he calls me back after a week or two after I paid him this retainer and says, well, there is a sealed indictment underway. And there's only one California resident on it. And so like, if, as long as if you're not Jonathan Wall, then you probably got nothing to worry about.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Really?
So
he said that?
Yeah. So that was,
shit.
Yeah. So
and you said, yep, that's me.
What do we do next kind of thing,
Yeah.
Cause obviously I'm not going to tell him that I'm should I go on the run? Something like that, but obviously now I knew that they had enough information. They knew what was going on to know that it's not just these guys in Maryland, that they know where it's coming from. And so at that point, I moved out of my house immediately and got rid of all my phones and kind of really started living like a ghost. I had like a surf van, like one of those Volkswagen Westphalias that I'm practically living out of now because I'm worried they're gonna come get me at any point in time. And crazy enough, I mean, it's just crazy how sometimes like the synchronicities of things work out. Because I'm hanging out with this friend of mine a lot that has he has like a little shop, like ceramics and like auto shop that works on Volkswagens. I just known him through that was in Santa Cruz, and his neighbor had like a vodka distillery and like his own vodka distillery in this like little commercial business park. And it just so happened that his mom lived with him, and she was Guatemalan. And not only had he spent time in Guatemala, but he had dated an attorney down there when he lived there for years, and he knew how to get passports, and he'd go down and introduce me to all the people I needed to know. And so obviously you can't take a bunch of cash across the border. You can't just like go into Mexico with your life savings in duffel bags and just walk across San Ysidro and be fine. There's how am I going to get my life savings and what I plan to live off of?
You actually can, there's no, I've tried that. We followed a gun trafficker once, going south with guns from the United States across the San Diego border into Mexico. You can drive and nobody stops you.
I hear you, but there's a chance still. So I didn't want to take that chance. And plus now it's pretty dangerous to be walking around Central America and Mexico with that kind of money on you.
Don't want to, yeah.
So I went, took it all and got a bunch of checks. I went contacted the attorney ahead of time in Guatemala. And so I had like already set up my new identity and bought a bearer shares corporation down there. It's called a bearer shares corporation. So it's like you buy a business that's already been set up in someone else's name. And if you have the like certificate for the bearer of shares, it's your business now. It's a total shell company, right? And so now you can open bank accounts, do whatever you want with it. And so now that I had the business name of this, I went to some contacts that I'd had and brought them a lot of valuables and cash and had them write out all these checks. I need all these checks written out to this business. And I know that the checks are going to expire in I think it's like 90 days was what it was. Like if a check from the United States internationally, this would be cashed in like a Guatemalan bank, that has to be, after the date that it's written on, it has to be like, you can't try to cash it 90 days later or after 90 days. It's like the threshold. Yeah. And so I didn't want to be in a situation where now I'm a fugitive overseas and these expire and I got to like contact these guys and be like, hey, that cash I gave you with that check? Can I send you back the old check and get you a new one? And so like, I had all these checks written out for different dates throughout times that I knew would be like a safe amount to cash, always under 10,000. So it's like I had a portfolio full of all these checks and a cryptocurrency thumb drive and we went right across the border. And I forgot, I should also tell you how I went. I didn't leave on my passport either. I had obviously won't put this friend on blast like that, but I had a friend that had kind of owed me a serious favor. He had gotten kidnapped in Baltimore from parking in the wrong place one night, and we paid his ransom. And I'd always use his fake ID when I was younger. That's just like to get into bars and buy alcohol and stuff like that. And I asked him, I didn't come to him like you owe me kind of thing, but I know that he was well aware that he'd been kidnapped in this crazy situation in Baltimore. There he didn't want to pay for parking at this warehouse we had. And he wasn't really involved in like the business. He was just like a childhood friend. And the warehouse had like a bunch of music stuff in it. And like he would go there and like play guitar and play drums. Like had all this like, cause we had just a cool place to hang out and do stuff. Sure. Yeah. We're using it to, unload trucks, but how often is that really happening? We got to use other, it was always a good idea to like try to get other people that were already involved or in the net, like involved enough to kind of know what was going on, but maybe not like directly participating, to maybe be tenants or hang out at these the warehouse or do stuff. Cause then other people in the neighbors see people going back and in there and other stuff's going on and they're not going to suspect, oh, that's weird. Like I noticed that these guys only come here about once a month and they pull a truck in and then they back all these cars in and then they leave and we don't see them again for once a month. And so anyway, this warehouse is in Baltimore. And it's not really in the best area. And I don't know. So I know I've kind of gone on a tangent to get away from it, but the story's so crazy that it's almost like worth telling, like how I ended up with this passport. Yeah. So anyway, he didn't want to pay for like the $5 a night parking to be right in the back of the warehouse. Instead, he's like drives this like, at the time it was like a brand new, like red little sports car, like a Volkswagen, like R32 GTI or something like that. And he decided to park on the other side of MLK Boulevard and walk at like 10 o'clock at night. And so as soon as he gets out of the car and he's like grabbing his like art easel out of the back of the car in like West Baltimore, these kids come up to him and stick a gun in his chest and they try to carjack him. but turns out his car's stick, so they can't try stick. So,
Oh my God. That's really funny.
yeah, so they end up holding him at gunpoint, driving around the city all night, calling everyone he knows to pay
To
his
try to
ransom.
get money. Yeah.
And so,
And you guys ended up paying.
of course, yeah.
Oh
It was the craziest thing. They, the kid, I'm the one like negotiating, dealing with the kid on the phone. We don't know what happened. We're thinking that something happened with the warehouse, and there's like a way bigger issue on our hands. I mean, not that the main issue is him and him getting hurt, but we're thinking that this is like correlated to the warehouse because we knew he was there. But it's completely unrelated, turns out, right? And so anyway, he's getting driven around at night with this gun in his head, and we pay his ransom, but we're trying to negotiate
Which was how much, by the way?
It's like $1,200.
Okay.
Right? It's like, it's nothing in comparison of like what it could have been and what we would have paid, obviously, to get him back. And at any rate, the kid that I'm dealing with, I mean, these kids were like all like juveniles. I mean, they were like 13, 15. I think one was like 17 years old that kidnapped them. Oh, they were kids. Just kids, right? And so it was crazy because the one I'm dealing with on the phone, I mean, Mariana, I could not make this up. He told me to call him Asswipe.
What?
That's literally what he told me to call him. That was his name, right? That's a guy that I'm dealing with, his handle, his moniker, and that we're negotiating this ransom with. And he directs us to go and put the money on the corner of Lombard and Carey Street in Baltimore. So he tells us to go get these black liquor store, like the black plastic bags they give you for alcohol. Alcohol because it's supposed to hide what's in it. But like you obviously know that it's that when you see the black bag. Anyway, he told us to get these black bags, put 600 and 600 inside of them, and then tape on the outside for Asswipe. I swear to God, couldn't make it up. And anyway, so we drop them off. And I was
like straight out of The Wire.
Oh yeah, no, I know. That's why I figured you'd appreciate it. So I was like, I have to like, I have to explain to you like how I ended up with this guy's passport. And so anyway, they let him go. They keep his phone, and the whole thing was wild. What was crazy is that the police kind of got involved in a little bit because I guess he called his parents first, and his parents didn't believe it, and they went to the police, and the police were like, "Oh no, your kid's trying to extort you for drug money," and so. I guess eventually he had to go talk to the police, and they didn't really believe the situation. And then it might have been like a week later, they called him, and they had a very similar crime that occurred, but these two people had gotten killed inside of a car.
Oh shit!
And apparently these two girls had gotten killed, and I guess they called the kids, and he had to go to a lineup, and lo and behold, they're the same people. So it was crazy. You know what I mean? It was like it was. Wow. Obviously, it must have been a really scary experience for him, and at the same time, like to see how close it could have become to.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was wild. So anyway,
wow. So this is the guy you got. Yeah,
this is the guy. I'm not gonna say we look identical, but it's close enough where I think you're just another güero in Mexico.
Another güero,
They look at it.
So you drove then. So you drove down with this. You flew.
We flew. Well, I walked across then because I didn't want to fly out of the United States on his passport.
Right.
I figured I'd be way better
Mexico.
off using his passport to cross into Mexico, and then I would use it to fly from. So we walked in from into Tijuana and flew from the Tijuana airport, which is a lot of Americans do anyway, because it's a lot cheaper flights if you're flying international. If you already live in Southern California, a lot of people are going to the Tijuana airport before they fly out of San Diego. And so we go walk across, my friend's neighbor comes with me, and we, at any rate, we fly to Mexico City. Then we fly from Mexico City to Tapachula. And he's like, dude, don't worry. I know exactly how we're going to be able to get you into Guatemala, and it'll look like if they ever figure out using this passport.
I figured. I've done a story on immigration in Tapachula.
I figured.
It was actually the death train. It was the first story we did on immigration here. It was about
because that's like where that's where they all have to come get off and try to they all get extorted and all types of crazy terrible stuff happens.
So that is just across the border from Guatemala, and that boarding crossing we did that.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing.
It's open, completely open. You can go back and forth between Mexico and Guatemala.
You can see the bridge right there. So he went and walked across the bridge.
Yeah, I did.
And so I went down by when you go down by the river.
Yeah.
And they have these guys on these
little boats that they bring the migrants from Guatemala into Mexico.
Yeah, never south really. They're always bringing them north. And then when they go south, I don't know if this was going on when you were there, but when I was there in 2019, there's the largest Walmart I've ever seen in my life. And it is not even in Tapachula. It is between the airport, which is already south of Tapachula, and the border. Because the thing is, in Guatemala, they have really high import taxes. And so all your little tiendas, they get all of their most of their stuff from Mexico, and it's all smuggled in. Yeah. And so you have these guys in these little rafts, and they're made out of the inner tube tires of 18-wheeler tires. That's right. And they got their stick, and they go across, and totally. They bring the migrants north, and they and they're bringing like toilet paper and Coca-Cola and stuff south. And so I don't know, I probably paid a guy like, I can't remember how many pesos it was.
It was probably like $2.
Yeah, it was like the equivalent of like $2.
Because the trip across the border is like 5 minutes.
No, it's right there. Yeah, it wasn't a long trip at all. You know, I was stuck waiting in that little village on the other side longer than I was on the boat.
That is insane. And meanwhile, in your pocket, you have a
thumb drive with
a shit ton
dozens
of
crypto, Bitcoin, and a crazy amount of checks in this backpack. And I probably had like $100,000 on me in just $100 bills. You know, doesn't take up that much space in my backpack.
So you have hundreds of thousands of dollars. Even more, millions.
It would definitely somewhere. I mean, at the time, Bitcoin wasn't worth what it is today. And
okay, give me an more or less an idea.
I don't know. I knew you were going to ask this.
Of course I'm going to ask.
No, I know. Of course, I know. I mean, we're talking. I mean, it wasn't anywhere near the kind of money that I'd made or what I'd had or what I'd even should have been able to leave with, because there came a point in time where it's like, I got to get out of the country before I can stick around just hanging out in a van in Santa Cruz, hoping they don't find me. Because I'm trying to get every bit of money that I can get back, right? And so it was probably somewhere in the ballpark of maybe, I don't know, it was over $1 million, but it wasn't over 3, you know, somewhere between there.
Somewhere between 1 and 3. Okay,
somewhere between 1 and 3, you know. In my mind, I'm like, this is not enough. Like, how am I going to live as a fugitive
that's what
forever
you were spending in a month.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, I'd gotten so like acclimated to just wasteful spending and having no like comprehension on what a dollar's really worth.
Right.
But yeah, I was like, I mean, at some point, you know, it became time that I had to leave before I could just stick around forever.
What's the town in Guatemala? I'm trying to remember what it's called. So it's Tapachula, and then you go to Guatemala, and I can't remember the name of the town.
I can't remember the name of the village on the other side.
But okay, so then you went from there to Guatemala City?
Yeah, so his like ex-girlfriend that he knew from Antigua, she came and picked us up, drove all the way up there and picked us up in her
Antigua
car.
is really beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Spent a lot of time there.
You did? Is that where you were as a fugitive?
Predominantly. I was really in Nicaragua most of the time because Nicaragua doesn't have an extradition treaty. Yeah. But the problem is I had to cash these checks in Guatemala because they're written out to a corporation that was a Guatemalan corporation. Okay. And so even though I'd opened a bank account with Bach in Nicaragua, because I hadn't incorporated the corporation in Nicaragua, I had to like frequently go back to Guatemala to like deposit the checks. So that was kind of how I got stuck there when COVID happened, and then what led to me coming back. But
mainly you were living in Nicaragua where?
In Popayapa. It's like near San Juan del Sur.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Is
like
it a beach town?
It's a beach town. It's beautiful. Okay. Like great surf. It's cool. It's a cool place. But like, I was spending, because I would go back to Antigua or like Guatemala frequently. I'd spend a lot of time in Antigua too. Like those were like the most of the time I was on the run, it was between those two places.
And then people would ask you, I'm assuming the first thing they ask you your name and what do you do, right? What would you tell people?
I mean, I definitely couldn't tell them my name that was on my Guatemalan passport. So that I ended up, buying down there. Cause I mean, at that point in time, even now my Spanish isn't like, the best, but it's certainly,
So what was your
doable.
fake name?
I mean, you got to keep it close to what your real name is, and so I think I went by like Jack or something like that.
Okay. And what did you tell people you did? How did you
I didn't really tell them I did anything necessarily. I kind of tried to play the whole kind of digital nomad kind of thing. But the reality is, to be honest with you, like I didn't spend much time around people, certainly not Americans or Westerners, because I was scared to death.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? I didn't want to be found out, because especially like those places, I think people don't realize this, but like if there's a reward out on you, those little, like a lot of people go on the run down there. Yeah. And so all those like,
did you meet other fugitives, by the way?
No, I didn't. Not that I knew of. I'm sure I met I definitely met some people that I had like inkling suspicions of. Like I remember there was this drug dealer, this like Australian drug dealer in Nicaragua that just sold coke and ketamine and just hung out in San Juan del Sur, and I obviously had my inkling suspicions about him.
He's a fugitive. Yeah, something. There's these guys they're known as the gringo hunters. Where what they do is they're paid by either family members or law enforcement to go and chase all the fugitives that exist throughout South America.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's lots of stories of dudes getting rendered back. Yeah. Like they'll go to because a lot of people think like if you go to like an extradition free country, like that doesn't have like extradition treaty with the United States, that doesn't mean they can't extradite you. And it also doesn't mean they can't render you back. Right. Like they can force you back. And if you're back, you're back. There's very little they can really do about it. And there's usually bounties involved. Right. And so a lot of people are trying to get those rewards. Yeah. And so if you're a fugitive and you're like staying in hotels and hostels and making yourself like integrated into the community there, everything sticks out to these people down there. People are a lot more observant than sometimes
Yeah,
we
give them
credit for, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
And this lasted for how long? How long were you there for?
About a year. Yeah, about a year.
And then what happened to convince
COVID happened, and the lockdowns that were insane. I had gone back to Guatemala to deposit some checks, and this must have been maybe in March. And I was there, and like I'd like rented like a little house, like through like an Airbnb type thing on there. It was like a classifieds listing, and at any rate, the lockdowns were they came out of nowhere, and they weren't. I mean, I wasn't in the United States for any of the COVID lockdowns, so I can't speak on how they were from my experience, but just from what I understand, from what I've seen and what I've heard from people, and from what I was seeing from being in jail fighting my case while COVID was going on, they were just insane down there. I mean, you couldn't leave the house; you were going arrested. They were so worried because they don't have the medical infrastructure and hospitals down there to be able to deal with a mass pandemic, and it's so early on. No one really knows how deadly this thing really is. You couldn't leave the house or you get arrested, except for like certain hours of the day to just go to, the like essential businesses like a pharmacy or a grocery store. But other than that, there was like a curfew, and it was like 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You couldn't leave until like 7 o'clock in the morning, and then it'd be 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And these would only be certain days of the week. And then like for the weekends, you couldn't be out at all. And you could never go outside of like whatever municipality you were in. So I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but I was like stuck in like Zacatepec state, which is where Antigua is. And if I tried to go to Guatemala, so much as Guatemala City, they have these like, like blockades almost like set up like a border crossing kind of, you know what I mean? To make sure that people weren't going in and out of different municipalities, because if there's like a contagion in one area, they're trying to like lock it down and keep it there. Meanwhile, Nicaragua was completely open. I'm hearing from people there that they're like, it's completely open. They're like not even regarding the pandemic as being a thing. And I'm just stuck there. And I'd really gotten into this I was already, was kind of like running from some demons as it is when I went on the run, not just from my case, but just from like the substance abuse and just kind of the way that I was living. That just because I went on the run and I'm running from something, it's not like all of a sudden that those things aren't going to follow me there. Yeah. And in Guatemala and Nicaragua, you can go to farmacias and really get whatever you want. You can go to, especially when we were talking about ketamine, I mean, you can go to Nicaragua, the same thing with Guatemala. You can go in to these they're like animal farm supply places, and hay ketamina and get the boqueras. Like what kind do you want? They'll have all these different types: ketanol, Ketaset, Anisket, and these like 500 milliliter like giant bottles. And I remember I walk out of there with like a 24 pack, like it was like natural ice over my shoulder. And so it just got really bad. I'm like running for my life. I can't communicate with my family. I was dating this girl for a long time that we had a pretty serious relationship, like living together. And, she was supposed to come down there and we were planning on having like kind of a life on the run down there. And, she ended up not coming. And no, I mean, I totally get it. Like, come on, like it was fun while it lasted. Right. But I mean, like there's no reason for you to hijack your life over like the situation I've gotten myself into. It'd have been cool if you told me this before I left. But, it's all right. But
so she didn't go. Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, I couldn't blame her though. I mean, I was already like, it wasn't like it lasted all that long that I was down there, that I was taking care of myself. Yeah. I think like being isolated and having and just having all that stress and really dealing with that and having that like monkey on your back of substance abuse use, especially something like ketamine. It's not only very addictive, but like kind of takes you to another place and takes you out of yourself. You really kind of get like addicted or like stuck on that, like being able to check out. Because like when your life is so bad, like you're able to completely check out from it.
Right. It's the only thing you're looking forward to.
Yeah. And so like I really got into a bad place where I was just doing a ton of ketamine. And like I just knew this wasn't sustainable eventually. Like after COVID, and I'm stuck inside the house all day long, practically not eating and just doing tons of ketamine. And eventually I just realized I was like, this is like, I'm going to die, this isn't gonna, like, what is this all going to be for, and there was no like light at the end of the tunnel. And when the pandemic was going to end, it just eventually, after like months down there. So from like probably March to June, I think I came back at sometime at the end of June. Eventually during that time, I'd reached out to this author. Actually, he was like he had a crazy cannabis case in the 80s. His name was Richard Stratton. And I'd found him on LinkedIn, and I'd read his book about like being on the run as a fugitive in the 70s and 80s with a cannabis case. And and then eventually wrote another book about his time in prison. He like represented himself at trial.
Wow.
Crazy bastard. And and I'd reached out to him because I was like, who can help me in this situation right now? My attorneys can't help me. They're all pissed because I fled the country, and I told them I was going to be at my arraignment, and they never heard from me again. I can't drag my parents into this, call my parents. Everyone in my life has left me because I've just become more or less a total cancer to their existence because of the problems that I got myself into, and also because of just the way that I was living, and what I like. I can't really blame him for that, but it was just a really dark place that I got myself into. And I don't know, you can only run from things for so long. And it was like, either I'm going to do this forever until like it doesn't, just, I run out of rope, or, or I should come back and figure out the best way to do it. And cause like, I don't know, at the end of the day, like I know that I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing, right? In a way, right? Like it was illegal. I was making more money than I should have been doing it. But at the end of the day, there is like this strange set of like systemic nepotism that exists that allows a substance to be treated in the eyes of the law one way when it's dealt with in this manner, that they make it extremely difficult to deal with. And you get ripped off left and right, as I explained to you what I went through trying to go the legitimate route versus, it's still the same thing at the end of the day. It's a plant, right? It's naturally here. God put it here, and that's not to say there aren't maybe some problems with it, and people can overuse a lot of things. But I mean, there's plants that are poisonous, right? But the fact that you can allow this to be legally sold in one way, and in another way, you're looking at 10 to life in prison. Because that was the other thing. Is all the time that I was doing this, it's a little illegal, right? Like that you're selling something not in the regulated manner that not all that long ago was being treated a whole lot differently. But there was no awareness of like the federal like guidelines and the statute of limitations for cannabis. I had no idea that cannabis was still a controlled dangerous substance, like tier 1, a CDS
right, Schedule 1. Yeah, and also, I mean the grayness of all of it, right? But also the idea that I don't think most people know, but a lot of the resources, the money that is being made by taxing the legal business of cannabis, at least in California, that money is then being used to go after the black market of cannabis.
Makes sense.
Which is, you think, because they sold it to you, is like, once they legalize cannabis, there's all this money that's going to come into the state that's going to be used to then, build schools and roads and whatever it is, infrastructure. And actually, I'm sure part of it is, but a lot of it is actually then going right back into fighting against the black market. Yeah. And the reason that black market exists in California, you'll talk to, this better than anyone, is because there's not because they've made it becoming legal so incredibly difficult and challenging and costly. Yeah. They made it practically impossible unless you're a big corporation and you have a shit ton of money to start with to start a business from scratch.
Absolutely. They make it, and because the whole design really, and it's interesting because there was a point in time like we were like making a lot of hash, and so we had built this massive hash lab that was all like ASME certified. Like it was a really it was a large operation. And so it got to a point where we were doing like kind of some consulting for like legal cannabis companies who were trying to build their own hash labs. And it was funny because I would meet all these guys that were like, private equity guys and like worked for pharmaceutical companies and all this stuff. Yeah. And like not at all the grassroots people that had just come out there and started doing this and growing cannabis as like a way, and like as a way of a livelihood to support their family. And it just was a totally different scene of people that were really involved in all these large cannabis companies.
And that's what was so unfair about it all, right? The people that for years and years were punished for being in the cannabis business. And then when actually cannabis becomes legal and they've spent their lives in this business, now they don't even get an opportunity to legalize their businesses.
Exactly.
It's
and let's be
incredibly unfair.
Yeah, of course. And it would never have been legal if it wasn't for these people constantly being renegades and refusing to do what they were told. It's always people that knew the government stance on this was totally skewed, right? That they knew the government was wrong. And because the government was wrong, they were still going to continue to cultivate this and to share it with people. And now they're the people that have been completely squeezed out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, people realize that there's money to be made.
Well, exactly. And there's money to be made in this bizarre, nuanced manner where it's so like they suffocate the industry in a way and they make it such a requirement to come at it with so much capital.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of places that like you can't have a criminal record to ever get a license. And I mean, they don't say any type of criminal record. They're talking about like, oh, if you have a cannabis criminal record, you can't get a cannabis license. I think New York's like one of the only places that actually have some sort of like social equity program to give people cannabis licenses.
So you contacted this writer guy who it's essentially kind of a similar story in the case that he was.
And he'd been through it. And so it's like, how many people do you know, right, that have been on the run and have found themselves in these situations, right? And so it's like when you're really trying to figure out what the best thing to do with your life is, and what to do is you got to find somebody, no matter what you're in, whatever what you're dealing with, right? You have to. We learn from the people who have been through the same things as us,
exactly.
right? And so, you know, this is a really bizarre, obscure, situation to be in. So it's like there's a very limited.
You found the one guy.
There's a very limited pool of resources, you know.
Yeah, and so you called him and said, "Hey."
More or less, I reached out to him on LinkedIn. Yeah, more or less.
On LinkedIn. Oh shit.
I reached out to him on LinkedIn. It's the only place I could find him. He didn't have like social media or anything.
And then he turns out to be very important for you, right?
Yeah, well, in a lot of ways. I mean, he definitely he certainly convinced me that I needed to come back, but also that I needed to come back, and that in a way that, you know, this whole cannabis, like the whole paradigm is so screwed up that there's still this, you can have it legal in one hand in one form of fashion, and it's very restrictive for people to get involved, and only and it's like the complete opposite of like the antitrust laws are supposed to be in effect here, right? They make it so that only certain people can participate so that they can have more or less a monopoly in the market. I mean, for the longest time, I almost wondered if that's why they were not making it federally legal, because then each state, people can go in and set up their own enterprises in each state, and it'll all be the same company, but they'll have like their Michigan version, their California version, their Colorado version. And
it benefits a lot of people, right?
Exactly. And so at any rate, they, so he convinced me I need to come back, and that he had the attorney for me that, which ended up really being a screwed up situation, and we'll get to that. But this, there's this guy he went to prison with that he knew, whose son was an attorney, and he was a writer, and he was like, he had had all these like kind of social justice pursuit cases that normally other people wouldn't take on. You know, I think he'd won like a massive like settlement for like the homeless in Denver that because like their encampment had been like destroyed by the Denver police. Like he took on like cases that other people wouldn't take, and tried different approaches to fighting the government. Like he was very much about, trying to show the government where they were wrong and go after that, like a very idealistic, right? And so he connected me with him, and the more or less had convinced me to come back and have him retain me, and we were going to go to trial with this. And we were not going to go to a trial in the sense that I didn't do it. It was, like there were even though the government had never had any evidence against me, hard evidence where they caught me with, any weed, or I was ever attached to any of these places they raided. I mean, like the way this conspiracy laws work is like all they need is somebody to get on the stand and say that you did this, and then they get another person get on the stand and say you did this. That's all they need. I mean, hearsay is inadmissible with conspiracy laws, but all the other charges, it's you have to have some kind of substantiated evidence. Yeah. And so the idea wasn't necessarily I'm gonna come back and go to trial to beat this and try to convince the world I didn't do this. It was more or less to try and see if we could get it's called jury nullification. And so it's like, how can you show the jury what's actually going on and what the consequences are, and how much time the government's giving these people for something that's legal. And so that it can be acquired at the time, Maryland was medicinal and it hadn't gone recreationally legal yet, but you could still go to the medicinal dispensaries in Maryland with a card and you could obtain cannabis, right? The same state that they're prosecuting me federally for, where I'm looking at a mandatory minimum of 10 years. And so, we decided that.
So it's almost like confronting them, showing them how ridiculous the situation is.
More or less, you know what I mean? And maybe I wasn't necessarily the best person for this, in the sense that it wasn't like I was like necessarily a dispensary owner who had gotten caught up like some people have. Right,
you were actually shipping.
I was absolutely, and I certainly own up to that, and it's just what it is, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, this thing is so much bigger than me. It's this like it transcends anything that I was doing. The fact of the matter is, like, there are people whose lives are being ruined, getting far more time than I got. Right? There's guys in federal prison today with life sentences for cannabis cases, and they're not coming home, regardless of this, Schedule 3 thing that Trump just did. they made sure that that wasn't retroactive. And then, well, you know what I found this out this morning. You know what the Supreme Court just ruled on in the last week?
No.
Now on 3582, which is the compassionate release motion that was like brought about with the First Step Act, where people could file for compassionate release if they had been, like overly sentenced or they had any kind of means for the court to give them some kind of mercy and letting them come home or reducing their sentence. Coincidentally, right, just after Trump passes that, the Supreme Court rules that no longer is a non-retroactive law change a reason or grounds for compassionate release. So if the law is, so if the laws change,
if now it becomes legal across the country, it's not retroactive. Doesn't matter. You can't ask for compassion in that case even.
Because, which is crazy because it becoming legal or becoming at the very least on a step towards full legalization with it being rescheduled, not just down to a 2, but all the way down to a 3, which is, very accessible. Lots of things that are Schedule 3 are like every, Tylenol, codeine. I think, even like more, I don't know. It is. To me, it's just what I don't understand is who does this benefit? Like why not release people that are in there for decades, for life because of these cannabis cases? Cannabis cases, yeah. Something that nobody ever died from. Something that.
So I was reading this morning when I was preparing for this that it was, I have numbers here. I have anything from 3,000 to 10,000 people are currently held federally for marijuana. But that this doesn't account for the hundreds of thousands of cannabis arrests that funnel through local and county jails each year. Yeah,
I totally believe it. Yeah. I mean, I bet you there's every bit of 5,000 to probably 10,000 cannabis cases that are all in federal prison. I mean, I met a ton of guys, a lot of them with way more time than I ever had.
Majority decades. Of them probably minorities, right? Majority of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's all across the board. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that people don't, that minorities don't get punished more severely for sure. That is just a given fact. Statistically, is proven.
Yeah, it's like 4 times more Black people get punished 4 times more.
Yeah, I totally and I definitely concur with that. Yeah. But I'm just saying that this even it still transcends even the racial aspect in the sense that it's. I met a lot of also white guys in prison that are doing life sentences or decades for cannabis. Right. Obviously, it's disproportionate. That's a given, right? But it's definitely been an issue that is drastically
right, and that's why as a journalist, you follow the money. You try to figure out who's this benefiting. Why is that the case? Why is it? Yeah. Why is it that the Supreme Court, if that's the case, I hadn't heard that, but why are they passing this law? And why is it that more people aren't looking at this and saying like, this is a wasteful resources. These guys should not be on a cannabis sentence.
No, I totally agree. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that when you go to prison, and I'm sure anybody who's gone and done like extended periods of time in prison can relate. It's like society. I mean, like you like cease to exist, right? And I think a lot of it is because they know how violent and institutionalized, like how much prison can institutionalize an individual. I almost feel like they're not very incentivized to kind of bring you home, because like now like the likelihood of recidivism, regardless of what you did once you've been to prison, is so much higher.
Yeah, it's like 60-70%.
Yeah, and I think 80%, something like that. It's something crazy. I don't know what the statistic is, but I know that like once you go to prison once, there's a high you have a higher chance of going back than you do of not, and just statistically speaking. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that everything in our country. And obviously, I'm a capitalist, right? Like I was a drug dealer, right? So like that's like the most pure, unadulterated form of capitalism there probably is. But I think that the fact of the matter is that our country is so like systemically across the board, all of various things that shouldn't be necessarily capitalist enterprises, they have become such, and they have a bottom line, and if your business is prisons, at the end of the day, your main priority is trying to keep them full and trying to build more of them. And so it's a situation that benefits very few people, that has had a drastic effect in the United States. And I think that this is something that can't be disputed, because when you look at the population of the prison population in the United States and you compare that to the rest of the world, it's like we have more people incarcerated in the United States than the next 10 countries combined. And so a lot of that
I think it's 20% of the world's incarcerated population.
I certainly believe that. And it's a lot of it's because it's become such an industry.
So you decided, so then you came here, and then how long was your trial?
Well, because COVID was going on, I was in it's called Chesapeake Detention Facility, but Maryland doesn't have any federal prisons. Well, they have Cumberland, which might as well be West Virginia because it's all the way in Western Maryland, but it's right on the border.
Yeah.
But they don't have any like federal pretrial. You have so like what happens is like the feds have like they have a contract with, like the Maryland Department of Corrections to house the federal pretrial inmates as they're fighting their cases. And so I was at what was the old Baltimore or Maryland's like level 4 supermax. So it was built to house guys that never came out the cell. And so obviously when we were there in pretrial, well, for the first year or so of COVID, we weren't coming out the cell. We can come out for like maybe 2 hours a day. And then you're in the cell 22 hours a day. And it was like staggered. So they would only let so many cells out at a time to shower and use a phone. But then,
and this is also the crazy thing. This is before you were even convicted.
Oh
right?
yeah, it's before I was even convicted. And this was the hardest time I did.
Right.
This place was it was a gladiator school. It was nuts because what's so crazy is because it's a state-run facility, but you're a federal inmate. All the infractions or whatever you do, short of getting charged of a crime, they're not going to carry over to your federal, to your record with your actual federal crime. And so, you're not going to lose. You stab a guy, you're not going to lose any good time as long as they don't press charges. Nothing's going to.
So people are doing crazy shit.
Oh, it was wild. Yeah, it was wild. I mean, it was. It was nuts. I mean, I saw some crazy.
Like
this
what?
is like, oh man. So this was my first week there. So what they would do when I flew back, I came in through LAX, right? And so there was 2 flights that were coming out of Guatemala at the time. And there was one every like 2 weeks. And they'd only just started doing this because there's so many Americans that are caught up in other countries. COVID pandemic's not going to end anytime soon. They're trying to figure out like, we got to get Americans back in the country. I book a flight and I had 2 options. One would go to Houston, I think 1 week, and then would go to LAX the next week. I picked the LAX flight. And so I got arrested as soon as the plane came in. I guess my attorney, because I now at this point retained this guy through Richard Stratton that he knew, and he had contacted them to obviously let the U.S. Attorney's Office and let them know that I'm coming back. And so they came on the plane with AR-15s, full Homeland Security. All the feds in the airport came on to have their little. It's all right.
Their photo op.
I guess, yeah, their little photo op, a little bit of action. I mean, it's COVID. I'm sure they're probably not getting all that much action. Yeah. So, I mean, it was like a battalion came on the plane.
Holy shit.
And they're masked up already as it is, and body armor and assault rifles, and came and pulled me right out of my seat, right in front of the rest of the plane.
It's like El Chapo came into town.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was a spectacle, that's for sure.
And then what?
Well, then it was crazy because the marshal who drives me there, he's like, "Man, weed? What? Because I'm in Los Angeles."
Right. And he's asking you like, dude, you must be here for real. Like, what were you doing?
Well, because obviously like they knew on the warrant and all that's like paperwork they had and they were flying, they knew what I was being picked up for. They still had their protocol, I guess, how to pull somebody off a plane. But like when the marshal was actually driving me to MDC Los Angeles, the guy, he's in there, he's like, "Dude, what the hell?
You're here for weed?
You're here for weed? We did all this for a weed case? I mean, what is nuts?"
This about? Yeah.
And so anyway, I go to MDCLA, I'm there, and because it's COVID, there everywhere you go is locked down. And so you're in the cell immediately for 2 weeks before you can even come out the cell and be in any sort of general population.
Right. You're quarantining essentially.
Yeah, quarantine. And so I got quarantined there. Then I had a bond hearing. Just because it was COVID and California's letting everybody out. They're letting out murderers. They're letting out all types of people because of COVID. Although, of course, this was the state. I had a bond hearing and the magistrate wouldn't let me out, which I didn't expect to get let out. But, why wouldn't you ask? And she said that she wouldn't let me out because of the alleged amount of narcotics I distributed in the community caused me to be a threat to the community. And there's only 2 reasons, like they're supposed to not let you out when you're in pretrial because you haven't been convicted yet. And it's either you're a danger to the community or you're a flight risk. And I would think, I was like, I'm probably an egregious flight risk, but I don't understand the danger to the community part. But anyway, so
that's funny.
So I after the bond hearing, I knew I was now going to get like extradited back across the country to Baltimore. And so I went to Orange County. They put me like a federal, it's kind of like similar to the Baltimore situation. It's not a federal spot, not like MDCLA. Like it's not ran by BOP guards. It was ran by like Orange County sheriffs.
but they have like federal pretrial there. So they held me there for a little while. Then they put me on a plane, all Con Air, everybody all shackled up. And it was crazy because it was like the law that they did the flight. We went and picked up some people. I guess I left in a van and went to Victorville. And then we picked up people at Victorville, got on the bus. And then we went from Victorville to McCarran, the airport in Los Angeles, or I'm sorry, Las Vegas. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, man, oh, how life has changed, So we were getting ready to go on the plane. It was wild. Remember this guy, he's in like a paper suit. So you already know that he's probably a mental case. They'll put people in paper clothes. Like they're like made of paper.
Why?
Usually it's like a punishment. I mean, like I eventually got put in paper before, like when I was in the shoe later on, but
because it's more uncomfortable. What's the idea between?
What's the whole thing? The feds have this whole like, I don't know if they really call it this, but there's, like scuttlebutt that they have like a protocol that they call no touch torture. And it's like all these ways that we can like really make you miserable without having to actually put our hands on you. And that doesn't mean they won't put their hands on you. Trust me. I've definitely seen them, do that plenty of times, but they have ways to just really psychologically, just kind of to screw with people. And so anyway, this guy, but usually like, somebody like, I mean, this is early on, so I maybe didn't know it at the time, but looking back now after having this experience, like I know that there was something up with the guy because he was in a paper suit, but so we're getting ready to go on the plane and he's just one of the first guys to take on a paper suit and he faints and in handcuffs, shackled up on the stairs. Cause it's not like you're going on like a regular, like when you go through the gate at the airport, you're on the tarmac and you're walking up on steps. And so he like faints and like falls down the stairs and the cops like grab him and pull him under the wing where nobody can see him. And somebody runs in the plane and he grabs like a little Pelican case. And I don't know what they hit him with, adrenaline or what, but I mean, moment wasn't all that much longer. He's being brought back on that plane. And my point is that like, no matter what you do, you are not going to miss that flight. So he's like, hands are like shaking and they bring it back on the plane. And we took off and we flew into Oklahoma. And at the time, because of COVID, the Federal Transfer Center in Oklahoma was closed. And so they took us to this like disgusting, dirty jail outside of Oklahoma City called Grady County. And everybody called it Shady Grady. And if anybody's listening to this has ever been there, I mean, it is like cockroaches everywhere, disgusting. And you're in one room with like 45 other men, lights on all the time, triple stack bunk beds, bologna sandwiches for dinner every night. And this was like the first time I'd ever seen any prison violence. It just totally shocked me. And it was crazy because like really I didn't understand like kind of the protocols about prison, like things really happen in prison and how you're supposed to like the tribal aspect of it, like I grew up in Baltimore. I'd never, I had Black friends, Hispanic friends, Asian friends, right? Like I'd never really experienced the kind of racism that just exists like in that tribal fashion in prison. And so anyway, I say all that to say that there's this guy. He was probably a mental patient, and I don't know where he got it, but we're waiting when we come into Grady County to get brought to wherever they're going to house us. And so they've got, let's say this is a unit that holds 45 people or whatever, this one room, but there's probably 80 of us in there or more than that because all the bunks are taken, all the places that are taken. People are just sitting on the ground in weird places, and if that's all filled up, a lot of people are just standing up, and we've been there for hours just waiting for them to process us. I don't know where this guy got this thing from, but he had a plunger. It was like a fiberglass plunger that he'd broken off. And there's no way that he could have brought this on the plane with him. Right. Unless like, unless he was, it
was very hidden. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a savage. He did that. But he had this plunger that was like, and it looked like it was like made of like fiber, like almost like industrial fiberglass. It was like shaped, like, it'd been shaped down. And it's probably like, it was long. And there was this guy that I'd been in transit with all the way since Orange County. There was another white guy who's from like Catalina Island, like a big meth case, and was sending meth, I guess, to the Midwest. And, like one of those situations where I remember the guy said to me, he's like, yeah, I mean, I'll probably never come home. Cause I guess like all the meth that comes across the border that gets sent to those, Midwest, especially like those areas like in North Dakota, where it's like you have all the people that are working on those, like, the fracking and all that big industry out there. And they punish, they do not take that kind of stuff lightly. And so, anyway, he was looking they had this one-way glass, and you could, if you blocked the light, you could see through it. And so it was kind of like the studio here where there's like glass pane, and there's like the area that went out into the hallway was all one-way glass. And if you put, he put his hands up and try to see like, when are they going to come and process us? And all of a sudden this guy walks up right behind him And, he was a massive black guy, much bigger than the guy. And I don't know where he got this plunger from. And he stabbed him right in the back.
Oof.
And stuck him right in the back. I
With the plunger?
The plunger. But
So like it went through him?
Oh, it got stuck in him. It was sharp enough that, he got it out of him, but it was left and stuck in the guy's back. And of course, like immediately all the other white guys and I guess like some of the Sureños, because there was like a prison gang, like kind of alliance between like the whites and the Sureños that I'm completely unaware of, because I haven't even really gotten indoctrinated into the prison like protocols, because I've been in quarantine and COVID everywhere I've been. And I remember I really got chewed out because I just sat on where I was at and just kind of was just shocked that I was seeing this,
And you're like, what's going to happen to me next?
Yeah, what the hell? You know what I mean? I'm not what's going to happen to me next necessarily, but there was awareness that like anything can happen to you at any point in time, regardless if you instigate it. Because the guy didn't instigate it. He's trying to look through the one-way glass. And anyway, I really got chewed out afterwards for not, because it was another white guy. I was supposed to have, I was supposed to have immediately gotten in there and like, protect, got involved myself.
Against the black guy.
Against the black guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which is just like antithetical to like how I've ever always thought.
Right.
And yeah, it was anyway. So after that happened, obviously the cops now come in because I see it on the camera. And now, funny enough, we might have been sitting there a lot longer had this not happened, because now they're actually processing us and getting us where we have to go. And then after that, I probably was only there 2 weeks before I got flown then to Baltimore. And the flight was going to, I think, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but I was the only person on the flight that came in to Baltimore's, supermax Chesapeake detention facility or whatever. And anyway, it's a whole long way to get to where I was trying to tell you about what some of the stuff that I saw there. And it was my first week when I was in quarantine. Now that there's not much help and assistance in places for people with like mental issues, they all end up in prison. Our prison's just full of mental patients. And that's probably what the guy was I'm sure that's what the guy was that stabbed the guy in the back. I'm sure he was just a mental patient. Right. Who knows what he did? And that's not to say mental patients aren't capable of violent crimes and doing terrible stuff, but it just
prison's not going to make them better.
It's not going to make them better.
Yeah,
right?
and they're eventually going to be released and be a danger to even a bigger danger to society.
A far bigger danger to society. And I think that also goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how like once you've been in prison, society now looks at you entirely differently and like liability, and they don't really necessarily want you out.
Yeah, nobody's giving you a second chance. Yeah.
And so anyway, this guy had to have been a mental patient, because all night he would kick the door, right? This was these big steel doors, and we're in a 2-tiered unit, and it's probably like 20 cells, maybe like 10 on the top, 10 on the bottom, maybe a little bit less than that. And they would let us out 1 hour a day. Each cell would go out and you'd be able to shower and use the phone for 15 minutes. And then they would, after a little bit less than an hour, they lock you in, bring out the next cell. And so, other than that, I'm just no books, no anything, just sitting there, staring at the ceiling, just waiting for what was going to come, kind of thinking about my situation, what I got myself into. And this guy would just keep kicking the door, boom, 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 all night long. And, Mariana, this was crazy. He had like stored up feces one day because he blocked the window. And when the cops came in, because like if you block up the window, that is a huge transgression, right? Because they can't see in. Now they don't know what you're doing. They don't know if you hung yourself. Don't know what. They're popping that door. They're coming in. They're pulling you out. And when they went to do that, this guy was naked and he covered himself in his filth, and he's fighting these cops off. And it was nuts. It was just totally insane. I'd never seen anything like it. And yeah, so obviously, they come in and they mace the living hell out of him. And now we're all breathing in mace, and they gotta, it's COVID. So it's already like a respiratory, you guys are so worried about, respiratory diseases. That's not to say that the mace wasn't called for. I don't know how else you would have subdued somebody, but anyway, that was like the real shock moment. Like, oh my God, where the hell am I?
Like, these are the people that I'm surrounded by.
These people I'm surrounded with. Yeah. And so, and that's not to say there weren't a lot of like really good dudes there that I connected with. There were just like, good salt of the earth people that obviously I'm like fish out of water. And this is not my element that showed me the ropes, and they didn't let that, like, especially because Baltimore has such a long history and documented history of like racial policing and like, just I don't know what do they call it, like redlining or green? I can't remember the term for it. Where all the busing stuff that kind of happened in like Boston and Baltimore's always had like an education system that's like been terrible and been known for just you have people coming out of there that can't even read, and they're getting passed and given high school diplomas just for showing up. And like it's like a whole forgotten population. And so obviously in my mind, I'm thinking coming here, it's like, you know, I'm going to be treated a certain way because of my race. And obviously this is all at the same time as the George Floyd stuff's going on. And so with that being said, I mean, it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. Right. I mean, I struck up like a lot of great relationships with good guys I'm still in touch with today. But that's not to say that there wasn't like I mean, I was probably one of the only white guys in most of the units that I was in, you know what I mean? Like it's just because in Baltimore is such a racial system there that short of you being a international, you know, going to the runs, fugitive, you know, like they're going to
massive cannabis dealer.
Well, I don't even think it was the cannabis part. I think all the guys in my case that got caught with other drugs didn't go on the run. They all got bond. You know, I would have gotten bond.
Wait, do you think that if you hadn't
I would have gotten bond.
fled, you would have just gotten bond?
I would have gotten bond.
So it was the fact that you fled that actually ended up.
Yeah, the fact that I fled. Yeah, for sure.
And you hadn't thought about this before you fled?
Well, when I fled, I wasn't thinking about ever coming back. You know, and it wasn't really till COVID and like things got so bad down there, and I'm. But
if you only gotten bond, why not just like live with that? If that was actually
bond is a temporary thing. You get bond to fight your case.
Right. Okay. So my question is, did you think when you left the country, when you became a fugitive, did you think that was there a part of you that thought I should just stay and fight this and there's a chance that they won't give me prison time? Or I guess contacting El Chapo's lawyer and him knowing your name gave you a pretty good idea that it was very high chance that you'd end up in prison.
For sure.
Right?
And that's also when I kind of figured out the ramifications of what I'd done. Like I didn't think that this was a mandatory, you're doing 10 years in prison thing. You know what I mean? Like I had no idea. I just couldn't fathom that. And that's on my fault of my own in a lot of ways, right? Like if you're going to do something, you should be very aware of what the consequences are.
Okay. So all this, the Chesapeake, all the stuff you're telling me this is all pre-trial still?
Yeah, it's all pre-trial.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so this is all like for, you know, as soon as I got in there, you know? And so, anyway, I fought my case there for I was probably there about 2.5 years. It took 2 years to go to trial. And then after I went to trial, oh man, my attorney, I think he kind of like, a lot of ways I know he was motivated to convince me to go to trial in this jury nullification thing. To not only is it more expensive, it provided him access to, you know, mostly stealing all of my money. Which, yeah, it's a whole crazy thing. The guy's been disbanded. He's been disbarred already for other behavior with other clients. And
was this the son of the lawyer?
This is the son of the guy that Richard knew. Yeah. I mean, this guy. I mean, he's already been disbarred, and so
does Richard know that?
Yeah, I mean, Richard's aware of what the guy did. I mean, it's not his fault.
He literally stole your money.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he came in there and convinced me that I should give him and trust him. He's like, my dad did all this time in prison. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to lose everything. Your friends are going to steal everything from you. You can't trust anyone. Trust me. I'm telling you, I grew up in poverty, and I knew what it was like watching my dad's friends and these attorneys and everybody come and show up and take all of his stuff when he went to prison.
Wow.
And I grew up in the projects in the barrio with my mom after my dad went to prison, and had nothing. Right. I know what it's like. I'll look out for your best interests.
And so you gave him your money.
I gave him access to the cryptocurrency recovery phrase, and gave him access to everything. Yeah.
And he took it all.
Took it all. Yeah.
Oh shit.
I mean, it's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of ways ill-gotten gains. In other ways, right? Like, I mean, I'm not trying. Like, look, money is a very pressing issue, and it's what people need to survive, right? Like, and it's now more than ever with the state of the economy. But and I mean, I'm saying in a lot of ways that obviously I was looking forward to getting out and having some sort of like safety cushion to be able to rebuild my life from. And but in a lot of ways, I feel like I can't do anything. There's nothing I can really do about it. I'm sure I could sue the guy and I could try to go after him, but like he's not going to have it in a place that it can never be found.
Right.
It's not like I can't call it an exchange. It was a cold storage wallet. I mean, the guy's got an office in Mexico City, and he lives in Mexico City half the time. And now he's been disbarred from the United States. I can't even expect him to be in the States much more. So it's like, I don't know. It's such an exercise in futility.
Yeah, it's an exercise in futility. You're right.
It's just something you got to learn to live with.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I don't know.
And so, but this was the guy that actually represented you at trial too.
Yeah.
And do you think he did a good job at the time?
No, I mean, there was some crazy, my trial should have been a mistrial. I mean, look, obviously I did what they alleged that I did in a lot of ways, but it turns out, so the feds, they withhold a lot of discovery when you go to trial or when you're fighting a case. Like if you plead guilty, you're going to probably find out very little about what they actually had on you. And when you go to trial though, they're obligated to provide everything. It's called your jinx discovery. And anyway, he had in my jinx, it turns out they lied at the grand jury transcript. The cops had gotten on the stand and deliberately lied. They, which is totally, I mean, that's everything else is fruit of the poisonous tree after that, right? Like, I mean, I should have been able to walk just because of that. And I probably could have fought a motion and tried to fight it afterwards, and that's probably a lot of the reason why I ended up having that settlement. I mean, we had filed this motion after trial with the public defender's office because of the terrible representation I'd gotten. And, but at any rate, before we, get to all that, it turns out that we got the day before that we started voir dire, which is jury selection. He comes to me and he tells me, it's like, well, I'm talking about voir dire, but he got it the day before. So we're talking at the table and he's like, look, we got this in the bag. They lied to the grand jury transcript. It turns out that one of the lead agents on the case, I don't even know if he's like a DEA agent because the guy was like a Harford County task force. He's like a deputized federal agent. The U.S. attorney is, talking to him I'm just reading the grand jury transcript, but as the conversation must have gone, he's saying, they're talking about the seizure of the cannabis that they'd gotten in Tennessee, right? The Homeland Security stuff, because that was like the only real large amount of cannabis they ever seized. And they had to find a way to show that I was the one that sent it when I hadn't. And they knew I hadn't, right? But
so is this the one that you was busted from your friend?
Yeah. This is how I really found out that even existed. That
he was doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at any rate, they're charging me with conspiracy to distribute metric tons of weed.
Right.
Which in all reality, it's like, it's not about what you know, it's about what you can prove.
Right.
And they may have known that was what was going on, but short of maybe some of the ledgers that they found in my co-defendant's position, in their possession, not in mine, there's not much way to prove that. And so what they did is they lied to the grand jury transcript and they said, I mean, it was crazy. I'm sure I'll send it to you. Like the transcripts, you can see it. They, I think it was something like I can't remember. It might've been like 90 kilos or 88 kilos, something like that, something close to that. And because the feds measure everything in like metric speak, it's all kilos, right? And so they use that to their advantage in this grand jury transcript because when the U.S.
they don't
attorney,
know how much that is.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The U.S. attorney is when he's asking the agent, he's having him testify in front of the grand jury about what was in the seizure of what they'd gotten. After they must have said, I mean, they say what the amount of kilos are, but then the U.S. attorney goes back and he says, the guy's name was Agent Majeski. And he says, Agent Majeski, if you don't mind, just could you help clarify some things just to make some more, just to provide better understanding for the, good, American ladies and gentlemen here at the grand jury that have taken off work to be here with us today. Could you please just give them a better understanding of how much weed, marijuana that actually was? And before he even gets a chance to say anything, because I can see it, the stenographer literally put Agent Majeski's name, expecting him to be able to respond. But because he got obviously interrupted, it was Agent Majeski ... Then it goes the U.S. attorney again. He says that was 2,560 pounds, wasn't it? Wasn't it something close to that? Like I understand that us here with the federal government, we measure everything in the metric system, but Americans they're not going to know the difference between how many kilos of weed that is. It's either pounds, quarter pounds, ounces, things of that nature, and that's not the metric system. Could you please elaborate? Yeah, before I think Agent Majeski, obviously knowing that like this U.S. attorney is not trying to make him perjure himself, it says that was, I don't think I have my calculator on me at the moment, but I think that sounds about right.
Oh, wow. And it was 80 kilos, you said?
Like 80 something kilos. Yeah.
Which is about 100 and something.
It's like 2.2 pounds per kilo. Yeah. So, right, it's probably like 200 something pounds.
200 pounds. Yeah. Holy shit. And they were saying basically there was 10 times more than what it was actually the reality.
Exactly. And so that was how they were able to indict me for a ton. Because they had to have physical evidence.
And why was it not a mistrial then? Immediately right there?
Well, I brought it up. It's all in my trial transcripts. We like got them on the stand and got them to admit that, caught them in their lie essentially. But it didn't matter when 7 people go up and testify against you anyway and say like.
And so all the people were all your friends. What was that moment like for you? Particularly when you're like best friend?
It was all right. Look, at the end of the day, at this point, like I'd already kind of accepted it and expected it. It wasn't.
I'm sure it was hurtful.
I don't know. At this point, it was already like. And people are going to do what they're going to do, right? And they're going to do what's obviously best for them in the situation. And after you realize kind of like, all right, this guy was already sending weed by himself, like from California and not really involving me or letting me know, which is not my business. If you're, You know,
least
you
tell
could
you.
obviously put our
Yeah.
whole operation at jeopardy by not doing this properly. You could have came and dealt with me. I would have taken your money and taken you to the farms and let you buy it yourself. And, you know, if this is your profits from what you've made from what we're doing, dude, I want you to make money. I want you to be more successful. That's great. Yeah, you can load that up with our load and we'll put it in there together. Like, you don't got to be sneaky about it.
Right.
You know, because at least I know that I'll make sure that it gets there and it's going to be, nothing's going to happen to it. And because there's protocols you got to go through to make sure that it's not just as easy as you vacuum seal it once or twice and throw it in a box. I mean, like, you have to set up companies and put in right people's names, especially when you're doing the freight route. You have to know the right places to drop it off. You have to either have them pick it up at a warehouse or show up with, you know, with a truck and a guy with a, you know, metal clipboard and a hard hat.
And he didn't know any of this.
Didn't know any of that, right?
And so, caught. And okay, so you then, and what was the sentencing like?
Well, sentencing came later. What's happened is during my trial, there was this really crazy thing that happened. It's in the New York Times article. And so this was where my trial should have been a mistrial, was that, and this is where I was really mad at my attorney. And this is like kind of where our rift happened. And what led him to sending me this like crazy invoice letter afterwards. Like, he sent me an invoice after trial, after I'd already fired him, for like, I don't know, like, it was like $1.2 million or something like that. After I had a retainer agreement that my defense would never cost more than $150,000 and I paid for it in full. But obviously this is his way of trying to put that money on taxes. I'd be able to tax whatever he took. I don't know. Long story short, what happened is they had this guy take the stand on my case. And this was the guy they had the most stuff on. He gotten caught with all types of drugs, tons of ketamine, tons of different kinds of pills, ecstasy pills, MDMA. I mean, like, it was like, you know, the Silk Road in this guy's house. And he testified on the stand that I'd made a death threat via a coded hand signal to him in the courtroom, which is totally, you know, fictitious, you know, and he said the death threat that I made was that I took my hand and I put my thumb and my forefinger together and I put it on my forehead like that. And that it meant that I was going to shoot him in the head and kill him. Said all this in front of the jury.
As if you're going to go with a bullet, put a bullet right now.
That's what he was saying. Yeah, that's what that meant. Yeah.
And that this happened.
This happened in trial.
But he was saying he did that you had done this to him from the table in the
while he was testifying in front of everybody. And so obviously I'd never done it.
What?
And I'm demanding that, like.
And there are no cameras in there?
That's what I was asked. That's what I was asking my attorney. I was like, ask them for the camera footage. And I was like, you ask them to pull the surveillance tape, because federal court. That's why you always see like the cartoons of people when they're in federal trial, because no cameras are allowed to be in the courtroom, but there's certain surveillance cameras.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah. And so I'm like demanding that they pull this. Like, I never made this death threat. I've never made a death threat on anybody in my life. You're going to tell me that they never called me on a phone call or a note or a kite trying to get it out of the prison to get rid of these guys before they testify. Yeah, but now all of a sudden that he is testifying, I'm suddenly going to threaten his life.
Sense,
come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Why do you think he said it?
I have no idea. I mean, it was weird because it was right after recess. So they'd had a recess, like a 15-minute recess, came back, and then immediately the U.S. attorney, he says, you said that the defendant, Mr. Wall here just a moment ago, he did something to you right now just before this last recess. Could you please elaborate on that for the court? And then he goes on to say that I had done this. And so.
That is insane. Wait, do you think it was the assistant attorney general or some sort of, was it the government who made him do that?
I think that they had really set up my trial in a way that they really didn't want. I mean, they had to make sure that I was painted out to be a criminal and then a violent criminal, and to separate me, because we were pushing the whole like legalization aspect. We had people outside the courtroom passing out pamphlets on, you know, like on jury nullification, how, you know, cannabis and the federal government shouldn't be treating it this way and going after it in this way and trying to bring awareness. Because if I'm in the cannabis industry and I'm selling weed and I don't have an idea of how the government really treats cannabis, I know that none of these people in the jury do. They're not going to think that I'm looking at decades in prison. And so at any rate, we because of that, because our whole defense was focused on the discrepancy in cannabis laws and how certain people were treated differently because of it. They really had to make sure that I couldn't look like just a regular guy who was selling weed or somebody who was a legal cannabis operator.
Because that would probably have a ripple effect on other cases that they have.
I don't know.
Maybe.
I don't know if that was more.
But they wanted to make sure that you were not going to leave
They wanted to make sure that they
as
won
a free man.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, they're very incentivized to make sure they win all their trials. That's why they don't ever go to trial. Not only is it expensive and it costs a lot of money, if they lose at trial, it's their career is just thrown off.
Your lawyer at the time when he was trying to get the nullification case, he said, you can buy weed and donuts in Washington, D.C., but 45 minutes away in Baltimore, my client is locked up in a cage. Yeah. Right? He said something like that. Yeah. But none of this worked, and particularly not with that supposed death threat that never really happened.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that should have been a mistrial. I got another trial from that because I'm being charged with conspiracy to distribute cannabis. I'm not being charged with conspiracy to commit a death threat.
Right.
So when you're on the stand testifying, hearsay, it may be inadmissible, but it has to be strictly related to what I'm being charged with. You can't go on the stand now and just say out of the blue that I did something that's not related to what I'm being charged with, especially when it's clear perjury. And so I immediately, the whole courtroom erupted, and I'm trying to get my attorney to do something about this. This is a mistrial. And we were hoping to get a mistrial. That was the whole point, right? Because we figured that if we can convince the government that we can at least get one juror, just one juror to not want to convict, right? They need a unanimous verdict. They need all 12 jurors to have the same verdict. And if we can get just one to not want to convict for cannabis, we didn't think, especially that time it was now during the Biden years. And so you had a more Democrat, the U.S. Attorney's Office wasn't ran by Republicans anymore. And we figured that, and here's the other crazy thing is, this is all at the same time as the Brittany Griner is being considered as wrongfully incarcerated for being caught with cannabis, trying to bring it into Russia. Right. There's this a large push in society for, there to be different treatment for cannabis. And Biden had just pardoned everybody. It was crazy. Why with the sentencing, Biden had just pardoned everyone for federal cannabis possession. Yeah. Not a thing. No one's ever been in the feds for possessing cannabis, right? Plenty of people have been in state prison for it, but never in the feds. And if they have been charged with it, it was maybe because they were in like a national park or in Washington, D.C. with it, or some kind of federal area, and they had a small amount of cannabis, but they never went to prison for it. So it didn't actually get anyone out or change anything. But one of the marshals, as I'm walking to the courtroom when I just got sentenced to, nearly a decade for cannabis, they were like, what? Like, I thought Biden just pardoned everybody for this.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, that was the whole. Our plan was that we need to get a mistrial so that
they you thought that out of the 12, at least one of them is going to think this is ridiculous, and they're not going to put me behind bars for 10 to life.
Exactly.
For this.
And even though if you get a mistrial, they can always come back and try you again. Right. They have to re-indict you. Right. And we figured that it would be too much trouble than it was worth, and they would probably just decide not to pursue another trial.
Yeah. And then so then it ends. They go in to the jury.
They deliver. Yeah, I mean, this was afterwards.
Deliberations took like 2 hours only.
Yeah, 2.5 hours maybe. Yeah, that was very long.
Which for you knew when they came back after 2.5 hours.
I knew after 2.5 hours that it was, and also I knew this was really a long shot. Right. I just kind of, I don't know. Maybe it was kind of idealistic. Right. I thought that it just seemed like the right thing to do. That someone had to bring awareness to this issue. Obviously, I don't want to be spending that like the rest of my life in prison, but I just had a feeling. I was like, this judge isn't going to give me more than a decade. It wasn't until I saw my PSI afterwards and realized that they have this thing called enhancements. And I was looking at a lot more than that for having gone to trial because they punish you for exercising your constitutional right. And I mean, fortunately, we had all these issues with my case that you had the grand jury transcript issue. You had this death threat that they knew I was going to be able to get back on in an appeal on. And
at the end, how much time did you get?
I got 8 years.
So that's what they said during the sentencing?
That's what they said during the sentencing because
you got 8 years.
I got 8 years. Obviously this is like far overly punitive punishment for cannabis that they came back and they said, listen, we will offer you under the mandatory minimum. We'll give it to you under the safety valve. We'll give you 8 years, but you have to surrender all your appeal rights, because they knew that there was all these issues. And at this point in time, I'd just done through my PSI beforehand where they give you your guidelines, and they had racked my guidelines up. It wasn't like I was looking at 10 years anymore. And I just put my family through this traumatic experience. My attorney just ran off with all my money. I can't afford another trial. Yeah. And so, at that point, it was just like the only really decision to make.
But you ended up not doing 8 years. What happened?
No, well, I did the full 8 years.
You did 8 years.
Yeah, well, I did 6 and some change. But the thing is, in the feds, you get a little bit of good time.
Yeah. And time served. Did you have any?
Well, I had the time served off the time I was in jail too. Exactly. So it's like from 20. I got out in 2026, and
you just got out in 3 months ago.
Yeah, 3 months ago.
And how has life been since?
It's been great. I mean, it's been different. It's challenging for sure. The world has changed a lot, just with artificial intelligence, and everything seems to be moving so much faster. So
actually, I was under the impression that you'd gotten out with the Biden pardons for people, because he pardoned a bunch of people who were in there for in prison for cannabis. No. But you actually did your full time. But your mother was trying to get that right?
Yeah, she was. Yeah, my
trying
mom.
to get you out.
She definitely was. I mean, oh man, she's a saint. You know, she was at the White House on 420. You know, woman's probably never smoking weed in her life, and she's like doing all this like charity work for these like this company, or not company. I'm sorry, charity Freedom Grow. It's like you know, they help cannabis prisoners and help put money on their books and
right. And the Last
books.
Prisoner, that's another
Last
one,
Prisoner
right?
Project. That's another one. They're more attorneys that are like, you know, cannabis corporate law attorneys that like work for cannabis companies. And Mary Bailey, you know, she's a saint. She runs the program and she helps all types of cannabis prisoners that are just doing time with just helping them with getting gifts for their family during the holidays. And
right. But none of this actually helped you, and you ended up having to
none of
serve
it.
your whole time.
None of it got me out early.
And okay, so tell me now, what's life been like?
Yeah, I mean, life's it's different. I mean, initially getting out, you know, I just went back and stayed with my parents first. Actually, you know, the day after tomorrow, I'll be moving to. I got a new place. I got a regular job, and you know, it'll be the first time doing that in a long time. But it's cool. It's working for a company that they like recycle tires and turn them into diesel fuel. It's kind of, you know, cool, something different to try. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a very different world than it used to be. It just things have changed.
I have no doubt that you're going places. You are you can tell that you're a very, very, very smart person that ran, unfortunately, on the illegal side, but you ran a big operation, a big business. You have incredible skills, and I have zero doubt that you're going to become something big.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mariana.
It's true, Jonathan. I can tell that you're just very smart. You're very, very talented at what you did. And I think you will find an opportunity to do it legally. I have no doubt.
Yeah, for you, that means the world. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true. I know that we'll be sitting here in 5 years, if not less, and you'll be telling me about all your successes.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mariana. Look forward to it.
It's true. So keep your head up.
Yeah.
You know, I know that a lot has changed, and I'm sure this whole experience has made you grow a lot and realize what's important in life. You've talked about that.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to see what's next for you, because I know it's big things.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything else you want to say? Are you as convinced as I am?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah, sorry. I don't mean to get emotional, but I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. Why
are you getting emotional?
I mean, it's I don't know. It's just been you know, someone have faith in you after having gone through this. It means a lot. You know, it's been a traumatic experience in a lot of ways. Not like anything in comparison to what other people go through. And other people have been through it in in the system, and some of the things I've seen and some of the stories that I've learned about what people go through. But you know, I'm really just grateful. You know, I'm grateful to have another chance. I'm grateful to still be young and to have my family and to have you know, have opportunity in front of me. And yeah.
Yeah. If I were to have a business, I would be very happy to hire you to run it. Yeah,
it's funny you say that. Yeah. It's funny you say that. I think
you'd be great at it.
Yeah, that's what the guy said that hired me. I actually knew him through my friend, a friend of mine that I did a lot of time with, who's still inside. His attorney that he like represents him pro se, because I mean they have a crazy dynamic going on. But anyway, he had introduced me to the attorney when I got out, and this attorney he when my friend had introduced him to me and we got connected, he's like, man, I know that you're probably looking at things like the world is gonna look down on you for what you did, but I could really use someone like you in my business. I consider it a net positive, like what you did and what you were able to do with at such a young age and how successful you were to be. I think that's a net positive, and I would really like to hire you. Yeah. So funny enough, I'll actually be starting there next week.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. So often the people that I interview in these black markets, the skills, can be transferable. And if they're given those opportunities, they can go on to lead their own legal businesses and do really well in the world. So
absolutely.
Really
I definitely see the corollaries.
Yeah. So I wish you the best of luck, and we'll reunite again in 5 years and we'll see where you're at.
Thank you, Mariana. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Yeah.